abridged version, yes. Members of Council, first of all, on everyone's behalf, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Councillor Dinah Dykstra. Welcome back. Very glad to see you looking so well and glad you're back with us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a point of personal privilege for a moment. I'd like to thank all the citizens who have sent me such lovely cards and flowers and phone calls wishing me well and so forth. And yes, I am back. Thank you very much.
Good. Welcome back. Members of Council, just before we start, just a couple of things I'd like to highlight from the summer. It hardly seems that we've been gone, but it is about a month since the last formal meeting. But I think there are two important things that have happened in the city. One is the General Motors announcement that obviously is of tremendous importance to us. And I've said they always knew that we could assemble cars very well, cars and trucks in this city, but that we have raised the notch several levels now with the addition of this new Research and Design Centre. This is the first time the big three that R&D will be done outside the United States. So we're very proud that it's Oshawa that's been chosen, and 160 Canadian graduate engineers or graduates of Canadian universities will have that opportunity to work here and be linked in a worldwide web of research and design engineering related to the automotive industry. So we've shown our proud place as number one again in the automotive industry in Canada. The second, and I'd like to particularly thank the 75th Anniversary Committee for the work to bring the snowbirds to the city last week. Councillor Claudia, it was a wonderful show and thousands of people enjoyed it. And a special thanks to the 151 Chadburn and to the Rotary Club of Oshawa for what they did in bringing that show to Oshawa. And third, and certainly not last, see in the report the building permit stats. And Oshawa again is showing tremendous momentum and growth. But I think what's so important to notice with us is that balance of residential, industrial, commercial, and institutional. So we've got a good long-term sustainability. So we've only been away a short time, but very positive things, and hope that that will carry forward for our work this fall. Members of Council, could I have a motion on the adoption of the minutes? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Gray. Are there any errors or omissions on the minutes? Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Correspondence, Councillor Acre?
Madam Mayor, may I make a declaration of interest under the Conflict of Interest Act on items 7 and 21 of the Operational Services Report as they pertain to clients of my father's business?
Thank you. We could take declarations now, and I think there are half a dozen of us. I'll make a declaration of interest on report OS 99267 under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, as I am involved in this issue. And Mr. Clerk, would you please notice same motion, same declaration by Councillor Clarke, Councillor Dykstra, Councillor Gray, Councillor Collage, and Councillor Nicholson, and Councillor Pidrivecki. Oh, you're not? No. Okay. Councillor B. Nicholson. Okay. I'm just doing the declarations, and then we can move the items later. Councillor Herald.
All declarations for this meeting, Madam Mayor? In that case, Madam Mayor, I'll make a declaration of interest on the report of operational services, the 50th report, item number 8, as a member of my family is involved in that matter.
Okay, any further declarations, and we can clear them for the evening? Okay, thank you. Correspondence 1 to 12? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Acre. Are there any to be questioned on 1 to 12? Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Correspondence number 31, livestock valuer, claim for one calf killed by wolves. Councillor Herald.
Madam Mayor, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor John Gray that the report of the livestock valuer be approved and compensation of $350 be paid to Mr. John Sloot.
On item number 31, those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Number 32, a written motion. Councillor Pidrivecki.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson. Correspondence item 32 from Walter Traherne be forwarded to the Oshawa Transit Commission for their consideration.
Thank you. On the motion to refer, those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Number 33, Mr. Jack Massey, Superintendent of Education Facilities Services, forwarding a list of name changes for Oshawa schools. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Claudsey, seconded by Councillor Gray, that the letter be received for information. On the motion, those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. Number 34, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Steve Gilchrist, announcing the restructuring of 4 regional municipalities. Councillor Herald?
Refer to Strategic Initiatives Committee, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Motion is to refer to the Strategic Initiatives Committee. Those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. Durham Board, Director of Education, notice of the Education Development Charges. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Move this be received for information, that a letter be sent from the city to the Durham District School Board congratulating on the elimination of the non-residential development charge.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dykstra. On the motion? Did you wish to speak? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Brian Nicholson, did you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, we've taken the step here in Oshawa of not having non-residential development charges as a way to stimulate business growth and development and job creation here in the community. The steps taken by the Durham District School Board, the public board, to remove their previous charges work hand in hand with our philosophy, and I think it'll be very appropriate step, and I think it's only appropriate for this council, who has from time to time not seen eye to eye with the school board, to congratulate them when they make the appropriate step.
Thank you. On the motion, Councillor Mike Nicholson? Councillor Nestor Pitt-Rebecca, did you wish to speak, or were you voting early? Okay. On the motion, those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 36, Ministry of Transport, Management Strategy for the Port of Oshawa. Councillor Pitt-Rebecca?
This be referred to the negotiating committee, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Herald. On the motion, those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Correspondence items 61 to 70 with a recommendation from clerks that they be received and filed. Moved by Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Collage. Are any to be questioned? Those in favour of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. There's one additional item of correspondence. Request for comment on the draft guidelines for mergers, acquisitions, amalgamations, and divestitures in the Ontario electricity sector. Strategic Initiatives Committee? Okay, moved to Strategic Initiatives, moved by Councillor Herald, seconded by Councillor Gray. Any questions on the motion? Those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. Could I have a motion to hear the delegations?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Herald. Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. The first delegation then, we welcome Mr. Duncan Reid, Executive Director of the Social Development Council of Ajax Pickering, and wishes to address Council on the Community Wellness Study. Mr. Reid? You're welcome to stand at the podium or come up and sit up here, whichever is more comfortable for you.
I like that.
Choices. It's really quite safe up here.
It's a privilege. And it's
You get a better view.
much nicer to do it sitting down.
There you are.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome.
Members of Council, my colleague Kevin Gregory will be doing the technical details. I want very quickly to talk to you and to talk, if I may, through you to the people of Oshawa very briefly about the Durham Region Community Wellness Study. This is a study, if we could have the next slide. This is a study that we are doing under commission from Human Resources Development Canada. It is guided by an advisory committee of 12 members who are people from across the region who bring nothing other than their own community experience and expertise and their love of the region to guide my team of researchers. And as we begin to we have taken the pulse of the region. We are, as the next slide will tell you, trying to document the current social, economic, health, and environmental issues in the region, to identify some priority concerns and to develop some strategies. And we in this region are looking, as the next slide tells you, we have had 16 focus groups, 2 of them here in Oshawa, 2 of them in every other municipality. We have, by telephone, had in-depth interviews with 1,500 people randomly selected from across the region. Those 1,500 people give us a fairly good insight into what's on the minds of the ordinary citizens. When you consider as well that a Gallup poll or an Environics poll of all of Canada measures with only 1,000 people to do 1,500 among the 450,000 people in Durham says we have some results that are fairly exact and fairly interesting. That's only a part of what I'm here to do, to share with you some of those results, but more importantly, I want to talk to you about the process that we want to involve you in, because the end result of this report is the community determining its future and making some recommendations to you. The questions that we are asking, if we can have the next slide, the questions we're focusing in the focus groups, we have asked people basically, what are the strengths of your community? What are the weaknesses of your community? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And in the 16 focus groups, we had a range of people who were experts and others who are just simply ordinary folks. We got some interesting results from the household survey and the key informant survey. We identified 8 major issues that relate to community wellness, and we will be having workshops on all of those on October the 1st, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But these are the concerns, and as you can see from looking down that list, most of those 8, with the exception of education, most of those 8 fall in some degree or other under your powers and responsibilities as members of council. And on the education one, the sidebar on that is employment, and that is something, of course, that is of interest to all of you, even in a city like Oshawa, which is just rejoicing, and I congratulate you for the good news of General Motors. The rest of the region would like to think there's some spillover to us in terms of this is a city that sort of motivates the rest of us, but we'll benefit from it too, but we congratulate you for it. If I could have the next slide to show you quickly some of the numbers to give you a clue as to the kinds of things that we're doing. The numbers, the darker numbers are Oshawa, the lighter columns are Durham. The darker numbers tell us that 95.6% of the people in Oshawa that we contacted are happy with their access to shopping. Somewhat different in the rest of the region, but the rest of the region numbers also include the Oshawa numbers, so the difference is really even greater. Similarly, you can pass on your congratulations for a job well done to your library board for the services they do. On the housing one, you have a greater variety of housing stock and your people know it. Municipality is a place to live. Your numbers still score quite high, quite impressively. On leisure activities and the availability of that, it's one of the rare numbers in our entire sample, a dead heat. And you'll have to come to our community forum to figure out what that means. We also, we're doing on this a little bit like Letterman, only being Canadian, we're half as good. We're presenting you the top 5 in each of these categories. These are the bottom 5, where the people that we talked to said these were the greatest concerns on their mind. Again, the darker columns are Oshawa, sense of job security. Even the people that we talked to who are employed say there's a concern about how long will it last. Hospital services, a problem for all of us, whether we live in the Lake Ridge or the Rouge Valley hospital areas. Crime rate, interestingly, perception of those numbers really say of a higher crime rate in Oshawa, but the numbers of, the next question, the data is not there, but the numbers that we asked about whether you feel personally safe, even though they're acknowledging a higher crime rate, more people in Oshawa say they're safe than people anywhere else in the region. So those are the numbers. In the drinking water numbers, I wouldn't worry about those. There's people in Ajax and Pickering have higher adverse numbers. The don't know numbers are the ones that I think you as politicians have to look at when I have that slide up there. These are the ones where we've asked people about certain issues, and these are just fascinating numbers in terms of what people are saying They don't know about things like funding for social agencies, the one over second from the right. They don't know about it yet. Through last June, May and June, which is not all that long ago, a lot of people thought that was a big election issue in terms of cuts to funding. Yet over half the people, both in the region and here, say they didn't know about it. There was a need, the other stat that I'll mention there, the one about the training of how to start a business. We were frankly astonished by the number of people, we don't have the graphic up for that one, but the number of people when we asked the question about whether they wanted information on that, like it's off the map in terms of numbers of people wanting information in terms of starting a business, and that tells us something significant, that if people are not certain about long-term job commitment, maybe they've got to become entrepreneurial and look after themselves. If I can have the next slide, please, Kevin. Don't want to talk to you about homelessness in a big way, but want to share with you. Oh, that's the education one, fine. I'll learn to read my script. It's okay. Do the education one. This is a fairly quick one because school started today, and in honor of former trustee Nicholson, I thought I'd put this up here for his benefit. These numbers tell us that the majority of people in Oshawa are satisfied, and in the region, and the numbers are close enough to be fairly dead on, they're happy with the elementary schools. There's a level of a fair degree of happiness. The high schools, no. And we all know, given what's gone on in the high schools, why that is in the past couple of years. College education, you soar better above the region. That's partly because of Durham College, I think. You soar better in terms of adult education, again, because of Durham College, I suspect. But those numbers are there for interest. The housing one, and it's the last one I believe that I'm showing you, just want to show you some numbers between 1991 and 1996. And these are Stats Canada numbers, that they are Durham and Oshawa. And I'll use the Oshawa ones to show you the change. In 1991, in Oshawa, 13.9% of the people of Oshawa who owned homes were paying 30% or more of their income for shelter support. 5 years later, that's climbed almost just over 5% to 19% in Oshawa. But look at the difference in numbers in Oshawa in terms of those who rent. It's 18% in 1991, 46% in 1996. Huge increase of people who suddenly become vulnerable if for some reason somebody loses a job for 2 or 3 months because your landlord wants the rent paid on time and you don't have the benefit that the homeowner does of having some equity in their home. That's where the homeless problem comes about. That's one of the other things that we will be talking about at the Wellness Forum, if I can have the next slide. We have written you, Your Worship, inviting you and a couple of members of your council and senior staff to come to this Community Wellness Forum to discuss some of these issues on October the 1st at the Whitby Mental Health Centre. This forum will bring together a broad cross-section of the people who've been involved in this process, plus community leaders, your colleagues from some of the other, all of the other councils are coming, private and public sector leaders, union leaders, a broad cross-section of people to do some visioning and some strategic planning. We hope you will come. We would also hope that if there's anybody listening to this out there, or watching this, I guess is the more modern term, out there who wants to call me at the Social Development Council to find out whether they can come. There are some spaces for the public, and that, if I may do the commercial, is 686-2661. The reason, if I may, in moving to the next to last slide, what we are trying to do in these workshops that will happen on that day is deal with these issues and try and begin to develop some strategies to improve the wellness of the community in those areas where there's evidence of things that need improving. In those many areas where people are happy, there's nothing more needs to be done. But the workshops will be the opportunity to participate, to discuss with members of the community some visions and some solutions. If I can have the last slide. The process for us ends November the 15th, when we present a report that will come to this council, will come to the other municipal councils, and will come to the regional council. We have had tremendous fun meeting with people from all across the region and getting input, vision, sense, feelings about a whole range of issues, some of which I haven't even talked about, but in terms of community solutions to perceived problems that would make this Durham a better place for all of us. The end result, as I say, at one level will be a report, but the money and the time and the effort will be wasted, and the vision of a whole lot of people will be wasted if all that comes out of it is a report. What we are trying to do is to, by this consultation process, develop a set of strategies that the communities can take and that the communities can begin to work forward with. This is not a wish list that says we have 17 major problems and Mike Harris, if you give us $4.2 billion, or Jean Chrétien, if you give us $4.2 billion, it will all be solved. This is a matter of trying to get the citizens back into the process of working towards practical, realistic community solutions, to do as the poet said, so that we in Durham can do as the poet said long ago. You know, some men see things as they are, and say, why? We who've done this study, all of us who've been involved in it, see things as they should be and say, why not? And I hope with that you will all come, as many of you who can will come on October the 1st.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reid. If you just wait a moment. Are there any members of council that might have questions or comments to Mr. Reid? Okay. Just would thank you then for the obvious effort that has been put in, and we'll look forward to a post-survey dialogue with you. You'll be most welcome.
Thank you, and thank you. This is actually, some of you have heard this before, and I'm assuming that's why there are no questions.
And there were a lot of questions then, yes.
There were a lot then, but again, thank you, and we'll be seeing you, and some of you on the 1st and all of you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 in the delegations, Mr. R.L. Brooks, Rick Brooks, addressing council concerning a report of Development Services Committee. Mr. Brooks, for all deputations, you're welcome to use the podium or to come and sit up here, and there is a time limit of 10 minutes, please, on presentations. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, councillors, staff, media, and concerned citizens. I'm here before you tonight with regards to the application for rezoning at Roslyn and Hortop Streets. My company, R.L. Brooks & Associates, were retained by the owners to explore the possibilities of expansion and renovation at the existing plaza most of you know as Pat and Mike's. As the planning staff's report will show you, the applicant's father has previously applied on several occasions to get an approval for one of various proposals. Having said that, we still need to address our issues, and it's very important to look at it as this application and critique it on its merits alone. Our concerns to be addressed in redevelopment are lack of handicap facilities and access, the building's age and wear and tear. The major anchor tenant, VON, needs to substantially increase their space. Ms. Evelyn Smith, VON's Executive Director, is here with me tonight. She would be very pleased to speak to that issue, should she be called upon. In reviewing comments from previous applications and talking to city staff, we have adopted our design philosophy. We found 5 consistent concerns with all previous applications: excessive noise, garbage, buildings were too big, massive, refuse boxes, multiple retail meant multiple refuse boxes, traffic at all hours. We reviewed the needs and wants of those previous applications and tried to address the issues as we saw them. We must emphasize that it is this proposal, and this proposal is limited to the original property, and the land required to do the previous applications has been sold. I hate to continue to dwell on the past, but it seems that we must, because it constantly comes back and won't go away. The entire addition under this application would be office space, and in fact would be reducing the amount of retail and percentage of retail in the existing plaza. We will modernize the entire facade and review the building services and infrastructure completely, providing accessibility to all. We're requesting the vacant lands to immediately to the west of the existing plaza, owned by our clients, to be rezoned from R1A, not to a commercial zone, but to a zone suitable for parking, and parking only as an ancillary use to our existing plaza. No buildings will be built on this land. Throughout the process, we started with a neighborhood meeting in May. We had a public meeting in June, planning meeting last week. The concerns from the neighbors, I have to say, have been consistent. In our minds, we feel we've addressed them, and we're comfortable that through the site plan approval process, we will be able to address all those issues. If I may comment on some of those concerns individually. For example, why does VON need more space? This consistently comes up. As I mentioned, Evelyn Smith may address that if you wish. They have researched enough to know that the location is ideally suited to their patient load. All services they employ or share are handy, and the fact that Roslyn Road is an arterial road in close proximity to Simcoe Street and close to Lake Ridge Health Services is important. At this location, they're far ahead of the other spaces that are available, and most of those spaces are in Whitby. Contrary to popular belief, suitable space is not available downtown. Snow removal. The current situation, as we have it, exists without the benefit of site plan approval. The asphalt currently goes right to the north property line, hence giving us a problem. And I know this has been a very contentious issue with some of the neighbors. Under this application, there will be a minimum of 3 meters of landscaping adjacent to the property lines. In some areas, it's even more. The asphalt will then slope to a new catch basin. All of this done in conjunction with Public Works and consistent with the site plan approval process. The lighting of the lot appeared to be an issue. It's a contention of this application, or this applicant, I should say, to have the lighting on timers. However, with the type of lighting that's shown on the plans, the design intent is to light down, not up or out. A perfect example of our type of lighting, for those that are familiar with the new parking lot we put in at William and Prince for Faith Place, the type of lighting that's there lights the cars, not the neighbors. As well, with the buffer of fencing and landscaping that's adjacent to the perimeter, I believe this is a moot point. The empty office spaces. This issue came up again at committee level. Unfortunately, we weren't able to address it at that time, but the plaza is currently at maximum. It was then, it is now. They're not all moved in yet. Our leasing arrangements actually, as we speak, they'll be moving in next month, and that will then make the plaza full. The additional space we wish to create already has one retail store under all but one retail store under a letter of intent to occupy. So it's safe to say that should we be fortunate enough to go ahead, we'll be at 98% occupancy before we even start. The billboard sign. As indicated at Planning Committee, it's our applicant's intent to remove the sign. We wish to remove the sign at the end of the current year's lease. Although their lease continues to the year 2002, as a condition of rezoning, they will agree to remove the sign July of 2000. Prior to that would involve significant financial responsibilities on the applicant, and to that end we would respectfully request July 2000. The east access from Roslyn Road. Our intentions were all along to have that access left open. Having said that, regional comments came back requesting us to close it, and we revised our plans. At committee last week, it became a bit of a political football whether or not it should be closed. Staff requested the region to respond prior to today's council meeting, and as of 4:30, there was no response at that time. I don't believe that they have responded this time. I should comment on that. Regardless of that, it's our wishes to continue negotiations with city staff, region, all through site plan approval process, whether or not that would stay open. The issue continued whether or not we had provisions for adequate parking should it be left open. And again, through consultation with through City Works and planning, we have certainly made available the spaces. As I indicated before, the comments from the neighborhood have been consistent. I respect that, and I respect them. It's our intent to continue to address the issues and keep them informed throughout the site plan approval process. To that end, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our picture and hope that it's cleared up some questions, and ready for comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Collage.
Mr. Brooks, would you tell me how much this enhancement to this plaza will cost the developer?
The initial budget, and it hasn't really changed, is at $1.3 million.
And the recommendations, I think there's 19 of them. Can you live with all of those except for that one about that item number KL, that billboard there be up until the year 2000, July, that you mentioned?
There were a couple that were certainly tender spots with the applicants. The issues that we wish to be clear about are that we want to continue negotiations with the city and the region on the access through with Roslyn Road, and negotiate the time frame of this removal of the sign. Yeah.
Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Mr. Brooks, did you indicate that there was a public consultation process undertaken by the applicant prior to coming to council? Did I hear that correctly?
What do you mean by that, Councilor?
Was there a meeting held with area residents regarding this proposal?
Yes, that was May the 5th.
How many people would have attended that meeting?
I don't have that with me, but at the planning public meeting, in the package that you got at that time, there was a copy of the letter that I sent to Tom Hodgins in planning, and it identified all of the, by address, it identified all of the people that were there. 15 maybe.
Okay, and was there an invitation this went out to a geographic area?
Yes.
Do you know how many homes were approached?
I requested from, again, from city planning, a copy of the list, the mailing list, and we sent it out to everyone on that list.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the one issue to me is the the roof billboard, and you're requesting that it be left there till July next year, but that's not the recommendation right now unless somebody makes a motion. That would be the recommendation. How would you proceed if that's left in? Would you remove the sign before you get an issuance of a building permit?
If it was a condition of the rezoning application being approved, they'd have to proceed in a lawful fashion, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Brooks, in reading the report, I noticed that the billboard sign is legal non-conforming, but it has that your client has the right to have the sign.
That's correct.
And so what you're trying to negotiate is a question of reasonable timing, not to incur financial penalty, but you would still concede that you'd give up the right to that sign 2 years before the end of the lease?
Yes.
I'm just trying to get the sort of time brackets on it, but 1 year would at least not have the owners incur a greater financial loss.
Actually, it's less than 1 year even.
September till July, okay.
Yeah.
But it is legal non-conforming, so it is there legally.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Members of council, you notice in the agenda that mentions that Anthony Volpe and Evelyn Smith are available to answer questions. Do you have any further questions specifically of the owners of the building or of the VON's need for space? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Dykstra?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may, to the VON.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
Brooks.
Thank you.
Would you mind coming forward, Ms. Smith? Again, you're welcome. The podium are here. Councillor Dykstra?
Hi, thank
Hello.
you. Thank you for coming forward. I just have one question. I received several calls today, and I'd just like to have it confirmed, if it's rumor or just talk, whatever it may be, that the discussion was that the VON needed more space. Yet I've heard representatives that were on the VON saying that you are downsizing. Can you clarify that for me?
Well, we're not downsizing. The ministry called tender for nursing services in a request for proposals last year, and I'm very proud and humbled to tell you that we were awarded 100,000 visits every year for 3 years. So as a result, we've had to add to our increase. We don't have space where we are now. We have 2 staff per office, and we've had to turn our library into a working office because we don't have space.
Okay. Thank you very much for
You're very
clarifying
welcome.
Okay. Anything further? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I wonder if it's possible if we could skip number 3 and have the delegation for number 4 and then have number 3 next, because it's the same issue.
Okay. Members of council, you wish to reverse the order? Okay. We'll move to the same issue, but the area residents then. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 who have indicated they wish to speak. First, I have Ms. Myrna Bayless.
She's unable to again tonight. I think I can speak on her behalf.
Okay, would you please come forward? If you'd please identify yourself with your address for the clerk for the records.
Madam Chairman, council members, my name is Gary Bayless of 695 Osler Street. And I'm concerned about runoff in the spring and snow removal. I have the lowest property in the entire block, surrounded by Jones and Hortop and Somerville with Osler on the west. And water runs into my yard from the north, the east, and the south. Now, I have a couple of photographs here that I don't know if I can pass around or not.
If you'd hand them to me, and then the clerk could pass them around. Thank you.
Now, granted, these photographs were taken in the summer after a heavy rain, but I get the same result in the spring, spring runoff. If we have a lot of snow on the ground and a sudden warm spell, say in March, my backyard is full like that. And in the spring, of course, with the ground still frozen, it can't go anywhere. It sits there. There is a drain, a man-made drain at the south border of my property that takes the water underneath Mr. Lupton's property at 689 Osler Street and eventually out to the storm sewers, I guess. But in the spring, it's blocked up with ice and snow, and I have been out there in my rubber boots with an axe and a shovel trying to open that drain, but it's virtually impossible. So the water eventually seeps down through crevices in the ground and ends up coming in my basement. There is an underground creek that runs skiddy corner across my property and across the northeast corner of my house, and that's where the water comes in. And I have taken some steps to correct that situation, but I don't know how successful it's going to be. Anyway, if that parking lot is extended to the west, and snow is pushed to the north and to the west and not removed, I can anticipate a lot more water running into my yard, and I can't tolerate any more water coming into my yard, as you can understand. I have had, in the past, had to take time off work in order to pump water out of my basement. Many times. One time in particular, I had to take the entire day off work, and I found that I could fill a 4-gallon water vac once every minute, fill and empty it once every minute. And I did that from 7:30 in the morning until noon, and several times again in the afternoon. So I can't tolerate any further water in my backyard. The snow would have to be removed, I believe. If that parking lot, if it's extended to 80 and 84 Roslyn Road West, it'll come within about 75 or 80 feet of the east wall of our homes on Osler Street. The north border of that parking lot would be virtually on the south border of Mr. Lupton's property at 689 Osler, and his backyard being narrow makes it about 25 feet from my south border. So I can anticipate a lot more runoff if the snow is piled to the north and to the west. My other point is the existing parking lot. I've been through that parking lot 3 times in the past 2 weeks, and I have counted anywhere from 16 to 24 unused parking spots. So I'm wondering, does the parking lot even need to be expanded, or expanded as far as indicated? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. Questions? Councillor Brian Nicholson.
To confirm with staff, are you aware that in the design of the parking system, the cash basin system, that all water from the new development site has to be retained on the site and disposed through the cash basin system?
That's what I've heard. I think it was Mr. Brooks stated that, and I think I understand that. I just hope that it will be.
So if that situation were to occur, that would alleviate your problem?
I think it would. It would certainly help. If the water doesn't run towards Mr. Lupton's property or towards my property, then it would certainly help.
You would definitely then stress that this is mandatory to any design on the property if it were approved.
Sorry, again?
You would then make sure, you would then hope that that would be mandatory.
Yeah.
On any design should it be approved by council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything further? Thank you again, Mr. Bayless. Mr. Ron Savoy, please.
Ron Savoy, I live at 690 Osler Street. I was here, chose to talk on security concerns, potentially more break-ins or stringent loitering into the neighborhood area in the parking lot. Kids hanging around, skateboarding, causing more damage into the area. And the height of the fence, what would the height of the fence be and what would it be built of? And the lights, how many lights will there be in the parking lot? And the duration of time the timers are going to be used on. And another thing that I have is one time there used to be five nice looking homes located on Roslyn just west of Hortop. The owner allowed 2 of them to go to ruins, and then they've since then been leveled. Another of the 5 homes was moved just north of the Plaza. The remaining 2 houses were rented to a variety of people who had no interest of caring for these homes, to the point of these appeared unlivable to the human. They've since been sold. The families who bought these houses have invested a lot of time and work to these properties and made them look good. My family and I have lived in the area for 10 years and have been involved in these separate issues with these properties. 3 different separate issues, sorry. To my knowledge, these issues have been ongoing since in the early 80s, and I wish they'd be put to rest by council for once and for all. These neighbors wish these properties remain residential zones. Thank you. And I also have another letter from another neighbor. That's about all I have to say, but would like to respond to a comment made by planning building meeting. I have to agree with remarks made by Councillor Nestor Pederecki that the place is an eyesore. to look at, and that the councillor said grass and weeds growing in between sidewalks and the asphalt. Well, I can tell you that the neighbor didn't put cost to do this or to happen. Only one person could have prevented this to happen, but did not do anything about it. This repair has been going on for years, but I think was well planned to look the way it is. But now a hero comes along and for the fourth by his representative that this mess can be all put back nice and shiny. But first you have to rezone the residential lots into a parking lot, allow him to almost double his plaza, which is not suitable to fit in our residential area, and then we'll make the area a nicer place to live in. Again, he should have done this 20 years ago. We have to look at it every hour of the day. He doesn't. He just comes into work at his store and goes home again on his way home in a very residential area in Whitby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Ms. Charlotte Hackney, please.
My name is Charlotte Hackney, and I live at 71 Jones Avenue. Our house is directly behind and abuts the existing parking lot. On August 30th, I attended the committee meeting and felt that there were far too many unresolved questions with regard to this expansion and the change in zoning. I feel that this plaza is indeed ready for a facelift and updating, but expansion of the building for more commercial and retail stores is not warranted. At the present time, there is vacant office space in the existing building. My question again will be, why is there a necessity to increase the floor space to 8,000 plus, it's actually 8,874 square feet, for additional office space when the upstairs of the present building is already usable and offices are vacant? I realize that VON occupies most of the downstairs floor space, and they have grown and they do require more room. Why is it not feasible for VON to occupy space upstairs in this building? If I am correct, the staff of VON visit their clients outside of the office. Should clients have appointments at the VON office, parking is certainly not a problem, and there are wheelchair spaces available. At no time have I ever observed the present parking lot filled to capacity, and I live right behind the parking lot and abut to it. With the type of businesses occupying the plaza, the hairdresser, the dentist, the lawyer, etc., most clients and patrons come and go. This does not require long-term parking. There are numerous locations in Oshawa where large vacant office space already exists. It's not the responsibility, nor is it a requirement of our neighborhood to find office space. Everyone here is well aware of the many locations available. Looking a few years from now, should VON decide to relocate, there will definitely be a very large office floor space to occupy. Would the next business or businesses have the same requirements? We would request the council not go ahead or issue a building permit until all issues regarding landscaping, curbing, privacy fencing, drainage and grading, lighting, snow removal, and the closing and opening of driveways on Hortop and Rosslyn roads are dealt with and are satisfied by both the city and the residents of our neighborhood. If rezoning should take place, we would require written assurance that no future commercial development would ever be allowed. This would have to be the very last time that this issue comes before council. I would like to draw your attention to the OMB report included with my letter dated July 25th, 1999, page 15, and I quote, that the proposed expansion represents an unwarranted intrusion into a stable residential neighborhood beyond an area that has been commercially zoned for many years. The residents in the area are entitled to the protection which they now enjoy under the existing land bylaw and official plan, and should not be required to suffer further unnecessary nuisance and inconvenience such as has been demonstrated by their evidence. We feel that this report still applies even today. Now, I also have a letter from Mrs. Bays, who lives at 79 Jones Avenue, and she does not wish to speak due to hearing difficulties, and she's asked me to represent her. And this is written by Mrs. Bays. At the present time, 10 feet of her property abut the existing parking lot on the west side of Pat and Mike's Plaza. This area is approximately 4 feet higher than her property, and she says councillors are more than welcome to check this out. Apparently, no restriction regarding elevation was enforced when the present parking lot was built, and she has lived there for more than 35 years. Mrs. Bathe feels justified in asking for assurance from the city that this situation will be rectified, and also that the elevation of the proposed new parking lot will not be higher than the additional 52 feet of her abutting property. Other property owners abutting the proposed new parking lot are equally concerned. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? Thank you very much for coming this evening. That concludes the deputations on that particular zoning application. Go back now to item number 3, Mr. Bruce Wood, regarding the Civic Auditorium and Sports Complex. Mr. Wood? Okay. You gonna come up here? Oh, the chair doesn't want to move, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of Council, for allowing me to address you this evening on what I believe is potentially the most important, impactful civic projects that the city has seen and looked at in over 35 years. I bring you good news to you this evening, and I'm ecstatic to tell you about it. But first, if I might spend just a minute reiterating some of the catalysts that have progressed us along for what I believe is a huge reinvestment in ourselves. In the last few years, a number of, if not most of Ontario Hockey League cities have reinvested in themselves and have found that by building sports and entertainment complex facilities, they have enhanced the economies of their cities and secured their main Ontario Hockey League tenant to multi-year agreements. This proves that their homework was correct and that they are now reaping the financial rewards. In Oshawa, we need to move on to realize what only a full benefit comparison can show of building anew versus repairing the old Civic. A new sports and entertainment complex has the potential to act not only as an economic catalyst for the city, but add 203 full-year jobs and create $12.2 million in annual economic activity for Oshawa. That's 203 full-year jobs and create $12.2 million in annual economic activity for Oshawa. That's really an important item that I'm sure you'll consider as you go through your deliberations into a 3-part process over the course of the next couple of months. Over 6,000 winter ice facilities, user families, and business interests here in Oshawa this evening are anxious for you to give a thumbs up to what is in their best interests. They see anything that would potentially add ice services to Oshawa is a very good and needed thing here. Their need is driven by, in part, hundreds of Oshawa kids and coaches driving as far as 50 kilometers a week to access ice time. Some kids don't have this as an option as they haven't passed through the registration process. And you've heard other members of the Oshawa Sports and Entertainment Steering Committee groups come before you who are also involved with other groups, such as the Ice Advisory Council, to speak before you on this matter. Bill Allen and a number of other presidents of organizations illustrating their concerns with the over 6,000 families that do utilize Oshawa's ice time facilities. So I think it's important to take a look at that and take that into consideration as we move through this process. Through this 3-part process, you will visit other cities' experiences of building anew, and we urge you to pick up on their good things, look at their bad things that they've gone through, and take what is needed and incorporate that into your deliberations, as I'm sure you will. It is these new complexes that sports fans have come to expect in this new era of arenas and that become destinations unto themselves. Barrie Sports Centre, Molson Centre, and Mississauga's Hershey Centres are two excellent examples. Both are extremely popular for their cities and for the regions that they're in. Accomplishing all these objectives is in your time frame, as suggested tonight in the report, won't be easy, but with a measure of working hard and working together, I'm sure you'll get us on to the second phase or phase 4 to get us to the expression of interest and request for proposal process. And now with respect to the good news that I referred to earlier, and that is that the some of you who don't already know that a survey was done throughout Oshawa on this matter, and the building of a new sports and entertainment complex is hugely popular. This survey indicated that while this is the case, that there were some concerns with locations with regards to the downtown. That was with respect to parking. That wouldn't be a factor, we don't think, in respect to, as that pertains to the weekends, in as much that currently there is, I don't think they charge for parking downtown at present on the weekends, but certainly that isn't to say that the Oshawa Generals wouldn't work with you in reevaluating their schedule, as they will do. And I also believe they would also like to work with Council as it comes down on a new arena issue as to how they would be able to facilitate keeping that building full. Certainly the attendance issue is of prime importance to them as well, and when it comes down to scheduling and things like long-term tenancy, that would be of a prime interest to you as well. This is probably one of the most important things I think that this council has been able to deal with respect to civic buildings here in the city of Oshawa over the past number of years. And again, I think it's wonderful that you're going forward to be able to tackle such a difficult issue that other councils have not been able to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Good night. Councillor, that concludes the deputations. Are there any matters tabled that are to be lifted from the table? Proceed then to the report of the Development Services Committee. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our privilege to report from the Development Services Committee, our respectively report and recommend to Council our 49th report, items 1 through 8.
Thank you. Are there any matters to be questioned? Councillor Dykstra. I would ask that item number 7 be referred to the in-camera portion. I would have a question and it would have to be in camera. Councillor Michael Nicholson?
One, please.
Okay, we've pulled one. So 1 is pulled, Councillor Acre? 1 and 6 are pulled, 7 referred to the in-camera portion. On the remainder, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 1, Councillor Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff, first, did staff receive any information from the region today that was to come in for council? The commissioner, so forth?
Okay, Mr. Hunt.
Through you, Madam Mayor. At about 4:40 today, a member of staff spoke with Cliff Curtis. While we did correspond with the region, we didn't get a response last week. We spoke with Cliff Curtis about 4:40 today. His comment in respect to the closure for the driveway was for safety reasons with respect to the proximity to Hortop and to the new driveway proposed to the west. And another comment made as follow-up to the committee meeting was the jurisdiction of the region. The comment given was that the region has jurisdiction to require closures of driveways as part of consideration for development applications.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that information, I would like to, and this has just been verbal, the area residents are not aware of this correspondence between our staff and the regional staff. I'd like to refer this item back to staff.
Okay, so you're moving that the item be referred back to staff?
Yes,
okay.
Until we have that information.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Mike Nicholson. On the referral, direction, and timing. Councillor Brian Nicholson?
Actually, that was the question I was going to raise in the point of order. What is the direction and timing?
Well,
okay. Councillor Dykstra, the answer is that the region has responded and that the region is requesting it for safety purposes. What were you seeking, please?
Well, Madam Mayor, I am aware that the region responded. I understood that. What I'm saying is that when we had the public hearing last week, a lot of the area residents were not aware yet of a response from the region, and I think it would only be fair to them to be able to respond to those comments, because that was one of the major concerns, was the driveway, was the closing.
Okay, we can't, if it's a referral, then I can't discuss the whole thing. A question to the chair of the committee, the issue then seems to be to reinforce what the region has said, to allow that to, go ahead.
Maybe you can help me, Madam Mayor. The problem I'm having with a referral to our staff is it's being referred to our staff when the decision is a regional decision. If someone has a question regarding the regional policy position regarding the closure of the driveway, that's something that should be addressed in the region of Durham.
Okay. I didn't understand that Councillor Dykstra's concern was jurisdiction. It was to notify the public,
Yes.
but the public would have been notified through this process, and it was part of the public meeting already. So, Councillor Dykstra, it's, and first of all, to refer back to staff, it is the committee that is bringing this to council, not staff.
Okay, all right, then let me say it a different way then. What I'm saying is that when we had the public hearing, that information wasn't available. In this past week, that information was not available. It's just been relayed in this past few minutes. It's not fair to the individuals that were concerned about this driveway and so forth. If we, okay, let me rephrase it then. Rather than refer to staff, refer back to committee, then can make the citizens aware.
Mr. Hunt, okay, let me just, Mr. Hunt, excuse me, would you please speak to whether under the Planning Act and under good practice, you believe the public had access to the necessary information as opposed to the detail of a phone call that you've just relayed?
Madam Mayor, the staff report reflects that the consideration was to close the driveway, and that in fact is the proposal in the drawing submitted by the applicant, is that the driveway is intended to be closed. That was the comment that we'd received from the region via normal circulation practices, and that was just confirmed today verbally.
Okay, so it's done. Okay, do you still wish to proceed? Okay, the motion will be to refer the item back to committee. On the motion to refer location and direction and timing, Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Yes, I don't know how to put this, well, I won't be rolled out of line here. I think what Councillor Dykstra is looking for is the same as me, is we've received from staff at the last minute a verbal update or whatever from a staff member that I have no knowledge of. And I would like something in writing from the region saying they have jurisdiction, because this is an existing driveway already. Why does it have to leave? The owners want it to stay. All the councillors wanted it to stay. In fact, I made a motion to committee for it to stay until we found out we didn't know who had jurisdiction. I would like it in writing who has jurisdiction, and I would like our legal department...
Direction and timing?
Well, I think I'm just trying to clarify that's the intent.
I'm trying to clarify direction and timing.
I think I'm speaking to direction. The direction of what we're looking for here.
Okay, well, the direction is to which committee? Okay, so you're in favor of it being referred back to committee? Okay. The motion is to refer this item back to the Development Services Committee. Those in favor of that referral? Those opposed? Referral is lost. The item is before us. Councillor Mike Nicholson.
I believe Councillor Dykstra still has the chair. She'd like to speak on the motion.
No, I have the chair. She may have the floor.
It's hard to tell some days.
Councillor Dykstra, did you wish to speak on this item?
I believe she still wants to
I took Councillor Dykstra's motion, and it was duly voted upon, and I moved down the list. Councillor Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Upon that, since it was lost, referring it back, then I cannot support this application that's before us in a spot rezoning till all issues are addressed. I do not feel that a 5-minute relay before council in a council meeting of information that is pertinent and was very animate by the citizens when you were at the public hearing, numerous citizens, their concern of the safety of the driveway and of Roslyn Road in Hortop. I think that there was a tremendous traffic flow from Roslyn Road, and that access was needed to be addressed from the citizens' perspective as well as mine. The end result of all this is that it's become an intrusion into the community. I don't care what anyone says, it is an intrusion. People live in the area for so long, they are established, they've paid their rights, they've paid their way, and it's just a lack of respect to the citizens. It seems to me that spot rezoning is something that's become very popular and very demanding into residential areas, and I think that it's time that we recognize what the citizens want and not what the developer wants. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Nicholson, would you wish to proceed?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I guess I have a few questions to staff. I think the point here from the public is not so much the expansion of the commercial area, but the parking lot. So my questions would be, if the parking lot was deleted from this item and the expansion was to be allowed on the commercial property that's existing, would the amount of spaces already existing in the plaza be sufficient to allow this rezoning to go ahead?
And this is addressed to Mr. Hunt?
Wherever, probably Mr. Hunt.
Mr. Hunt?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the design for the plaza expansion is consistent with the parking requirement ratios of the zoning bylaw related to the floor space. I couldn't answer the question in respect to whether you could allow the floor space proposed and only contain the parking on the existing commercial, and whether that would be sufficient to handle the expansion. That would have to be investigated further. That would also result in a consideration for a change in the parking ratio.
And I guess second to that would be the driveway. I don't know who would answer this one. Mr. Dickman, Mr. Hunt said that he spoke to some gentleman today at the region. I'm not aware who this gentleman is because I'm not a regional councillor. And does he have any bosses? Was he a lower tier gentleman? Does he make the final decision? I know regional council thinks they do sometimes, but
never.
We don't know.
Not on work sessions.
I guess what I'm
not when it's Mr. Cliff Curtis.
I guess I'm getting it. I don't know who this gentleman is. Is he the final guy that makes a decision? And would it go any higher than that if we disagreed with him on whether it's our jurisdiction or theirs?
And your question this time is to Mr. Dignan in terms of traffic, is it, or to Mr. Hunt?
Whoever can answer that one.
Mr.
I don't
Hunt.
deal with the region, so I don't know who handles
Mr. Hunt.
Madam Mayor, it was Paul Ralph of my staff who spoke with Cliff Curtis at the region. Cliff Curtis, I don't know his specific title, but I characterize him as middle management. And we have corresponded with them. We're still awaiting reply correspondence. It just hasn't arrived.
So I guess what I get from that is that he does have a boss higher up that could make a judgment call that this could stay open by reviewing this driveway.
I can't comment on that, Madam Mayor.
Exactly, and that's our point to Councillor Dykstra, and my point on this whole process is that the committee asked that a response be made by the region. We got that response by a middle manager late in the day, nothing in paper, nothing over who owns jurisdiction, nothing from our legal department who owns that jurisdiction, seeing that it's already an entranceway now. It was I believe the majority of all councillors at that meeting that it stay open. The motion was made that it stay open. The citizens wanted it to stay open, and so do the owners of the plaza. So I think this is a huge question mark, and until we get this question mark, I think it should be referred back to our committee to look at what the final guest decision on this. I know I've already spoke, so I guess I just finish it up by saying that I'm against spot rezoning. I spoke against this plan at the committee. I have nothing against the commercial property already there and changing the buildings to suit the owners. I think spot rezoning is a disgrace to the residents that own the properties around. I think it's an intrusion. The OMB has already said it was. On this term of council, I see this council leaning towards commercial investment into residential zones. We've okayed it already, and I believe it probably will okay tonight. I think it's a disappointment to the people that elect us to allow our properties in our residential areas to be rezoned for commercial uses. There's enough commercial property and industrial property in Oshawa that we don't have to turn our backyards and our safety zones for our children and seniors into commercial zones. And that's what we would be looking at. I think if the people could have any rezoning here without changing the 2 residential lots, allowing them to go back to homes, I think this would fly by no problem. And I just wondered if we allow a parking lot to go up in those 2 residential lots now, what the next council of day allows for another building to be put onto the west side and the parking be moved again and again, and this would just be an ongoing. I think it's being fought by the community, and I think it's wrong, and I think council should live up to why they're elected, to listen to the citizens, and I think they're talking now. We're not only here for the business owners, we're here for the protection of our neighborhoods. So I'm totally against this.
Thank you. I have Councillors Boychin, Brian Nicholson, and Clarke. Councillor Boychin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move a motion, and then subsequently I'd like to speak to this matter. My motion is relating to subparagraph L, paragraph L. And the amendment would be, I'll just read the revised paragraph, that prior to the issuance of a building permit, let me start again, that a building permit be issued subject to the written undertaking of the applicant to remove the existing roof billboard sign at the expiration of the current year's lease.
Date, put a date in.
Well,
On.
I'm not sure the exact date. Is it July 1st?
First or the end of July?
Is it
July 1? By July 1, 2000.
By July 1, 2000.
Okay. So you would delete L and replace it with subject to a written undertaking that the lease would not be renewed at the end of that time. And your seconder is?
Kathy Clarke.
Councillor Clarke. Thank you. On that amendment.
I think the amendment speaks for itself. The applicant's representative has indicated, and your worship verified that the applicant has that sign on the roof as of right, that it is a legal non-conforming sign, and there is really no legal obligation or legal right on the part of the city to insist that that sign be removed. And notwithstanding that, the applicant, through his representative, has given an undertaking in his presentation that they will remove that sign, and they wish to do that at the end of the current year's lease in order to avoid significant financial penalties for early termination.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak to that amendment? Councillor Herald.
Madam Mayor, I speak against the amendment. To me, item number L was one of the most significant items in the report. It was certainly an issue that I felt very strongly about right from the outset. I notified both councillors for the area that it was an issue that I was concerned about, and that any support that I might give to the project or to the application was conditional upon the removal of the billboard. I believe that the staff recommendation that the billboard should be removed prior to the issuance of a building permit is the appropriate recommendation, and I subsequently will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, I need to ask a timing question again. What is the likely time requirement to complete the design on this building and to be ready to start construction? And what I'm looking for is the potential difference in time between this issue as presented this evening and the 1st of July. That time might be insignificant.
Madam Mayor, to reply to that, it might be, but city staff's really at the hands of the developer in respect to development applications and the production of plans and the aggressiveness at which they want to go on with their projects. So I would suggest maybe Mr. Brooks could reply better to that.
Okay, I don't know how much you've got now as to when you might be doing it. Mr. Brooks, would you have any idea of the reasonable time that you would be expecting to pull the permit? I appreciate there are a lot of circumstances that could...
There are so many variables that can come into play in this situation. Of course, we have to go through the site plan approval process, making application for permit, the development charges will have to have some money will have to cross the table. I would realistically say we're probably looking at January.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've had Councillors Boychin and Herald. Councillor Dykstra.
Clarified.
Councillor Mike Nicholson on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm too against the amendment. I totally agree with Councillor Herald. I think this was a condition that the city wanted and the applicant agreed to. I heard him at the meeting last week and tonight when I asked it if this was a condition, they would comply with it, period. Didn't say they would break the law by leaving it up there or not. He said he would comply with it. I think what we're looking at is a money concern, and I don't see anything down in front of me on writing to say when that could be removed, whether it's now or 2 months from now or 2 years from now. The lease, I guess, or the rental or whatever you want to call it on that sign is for 2 more years or 3 more years to 2002. So I did clearly hear the applicants say that they would have to agree to this if it was part of it, and I think we should keep it as part of it. It was something that the city wanted, the citizens wanted, and he agreed to, so let's not buckle under here just for a matter of a few $100s here or there to keep people happy. The residents are going to put out, so the applicant may have to be put out a little bit financially on this too.
Okay. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Now, I may have missed something during the public hearing process. I don't think I did. But, in all the letters I've read and all the public meetings I've attended on this item, I've never heard a citizen raise that the billboard has to be removed. I've heard our staff raise it as part of our overall policy of getting rid of billboards within a city, which this council endorsed. And the only reason this is in there is to follow under the spirit of that policy where we're trying to eliminate the number of, especially those who are non-conforming, billboards. There has not been a great petitioning campaign from the area residents at any part of the process saying that billboard's got to go by January 30th, 2000 or else. To simply take I think a knee-jerk reaction and say, we're going to shut it down at building permit, says that we're not willing to work with the applicant to try and resolve problems. And we'll let him spend $10,000 or $15,000 taking down the billboard that we might have got him to spend in upgrading the lighting, or the landscaping, or the parking lot, or the catch basins, or other amenities that we wish to try and get part of the site plan process. We all know that in a site plan process, both sides have agendas, and there's a negotiation that goes forward. I believe if we show that we have the flexibility to address their concerns, they will enter the site plan process in a far more positive, far more creative, and far more cooperative approach than if we simply take the hammer and say, you'll do it our way or else, then they'll do the minimum that is required to get by. It's all part of the spirit of how you approach development. If everything is going to be done by the letter of the law to the point of we put a bubble of everything, and we simply follow the letter line with no flexibility, then we should not be surprised when the other side replies with no flexibility as well. So I think what you gain in one hand, you may lose more so down the road. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers on the amendment? Councillor
Madam Mayor, with regard to the amendment, could we possibly get some clarification from the owner or his consultant as to, is it possible to have it removed by January when the site plan agreement comes forward for approval?
I think that the answer we had, and Mr. Brooks would have an opportunity to add to it, is that the lease runs until 2002. There's an opportunity for them to reasonably break the lease the 1st of January 2000, the 1st of July, excuse me. The permit may be pulled by January if everything goes well. So what they're asking for is a 5 or 6 month extension to not incur a penalty from the sign company. Have I got the, okay. So it can always physically be taken down, but being taken down.
I don't know that it can, Madam Mayor. I'd like to hear that from the people who are
certainly. Mr. Brooks,
leasing it.
is it a question of actually being able to remove the sign plus the financial penalty?
Physically, it could be removed. The problem that we have is strictly a monetary issue because of the costs involved in taking the steel structure down ahead of time. It's as well as the loss of revenue because the lease arrangements with Mediacom, they are reimbursed, they being the applicant, are reimbursed for the sign in advance. So technically, they have been paid up to the 1st of July for the use and the saleability of that sign. So if it was to come down ahead of time, not only would they incur the cost of removing the sign, they'd have to return a portion of the additional cost doing it outside the building permit to the tune of 5 months of a 12-month. So it's substantial.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. On the amendment, Councillor Boychin, would you be good enough to read your amendment? Would you like the clerk to do it?
The clerk can do it, please.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the amendment as I have it is that prior to the issuance of a building permit would be subject to a written undertaking that the roof billboard sign not be renewed beyond July 1, 2000.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? The amendment carries. On the main motion, Councillor Boychin, did you wish to speak to anything there as well?
Well, Madam Mayor, I would just like to say that I would support this application. I understand that there is a significant history to this particular property, but I think this current application should be dealt with on its merits and not on the history of the property. And having sat through the public hearing, the presentation by the applicant, seeing what there's proposed for the building and proposed for the lands, I think it will enhance that area of the city. The existing building is becoming, I think polite word is rather tired, and I think the plans that the applicant has brought forward will certainly rejuvenate the building and rejuvenate the area, and I think it will be an enhancement, as I said, to that particular area of the city. I've heard the concerns of the residents. Mr. Bayless is concerned about water draining onto his property. I hope that as a result of the answers that have been given by staff tonight, that the matter of drainage of water originating on the subject property is to be contained within the subject property and not escape the subject property and go on to Mr. Bayless's property. So I think that concern is adequately addressed and will be implemented into the site plan agreement. And I think the other concerns that have been raised by residents about fencing and the lighting, Mr. Brooks has indicated that they intend to use lighting that will shine down on the cars or on the parking lot as opposed to lighting up the entire area. And I can appreciate some of the older forms of lighting and the difficulties that it has caused to neighbors, neighboring properties. So I think the concerns that have been raised by the residents will be addressed satisfactorily in the site plan agreement. I've had some experience in my previous life in dealing with City Hall and site plan agreements, and I know they can be quite specific and quite detailed, and I genuinely do not believe that the residents have any concerns or should have any concerns about the quality of the undertaking that is being proposed here, and that their concerns will be addressed in an adequate fashion.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to just relate to a couple of points because I think there is some confusion. And I think it's important that before council votes on it, that we in fact clear up some of the confusion. It's been raised by a couple of councillors, the concern of the driveway that's currently to the west of Hortop off of Roslyn, that the region is requiring, as part of their approvals process, that this driveway be taken out, and somehow that we're approving that tonight. I'd like to clarify that's not what we're approving tonight. What we're approving in sections H and I are the commitments that the developer, the applicant, is required to provide the monies to do any of the works as designated by the region. And there still is an opportunity for area residents to address the retention or removal of that driveway through the site plan approval process and through correspondence with the region. It is the region that has the jurisdiction of whether that driveway is to be removed or not. If they wish it to be removed and that is their decision, then the developer will pay the appropriate cost to make sure that that driveway is taken out. If after delegation or comment or letter from area residents that it's the belief that that particular driveway should be retained, and I can tell you personally, I tend to support that view, and that the region agrees with that, then that too can be written into the site plan agreement process, and there's no then requirement for the developer, or excuse me, the applicant, to make any cost. I guess what I'm basically saying is, as the jurisdiction for that decision is at the region of Durham, they will make that decision at that level. And nothing in the application today that's being suggested for approval takes away an opportunity from the area residents to make their case. What has been told to us very clearly, in fact, I raised it at the committee about jurisdictions. I had some questions whether the region had the jurisdiction to require removal, because I do know they have the jurisdiction to, their approval is necessary for adding, but I didn't know they could actually order them out. But I'm told that that in fact is their opinion, and that means we can further investigate options. So please be, as councillors, be notified that H and I only talk about setting the parameters for a regional decision. They do not necessarily demand that that driveway come out at this point. There still is opportunity for further discussion. Part D, and it's something we also addressed at committee, clearly outlines that the site plan agreement between the applicant and the city must address a series of issues that affect the impact on neighboring properties. Not only is there a situation where the site owner must in fact submit plans on approval, building elevations, landscaping, grading, drainage, and servicing, we have added, and it's very clear in this section, that the site plan shall also address matters related to security, lighting, snow removal, grounds maintenance, and noise. And part of the site plan process is that those issues must be addressed to the under the acceptance of the city. It's not up to the applicant to decide what is sufficient or what is insufficient. The city will have to approve their suggestions and work with the applicant to address. And this gives us an opportunity for the ward councillors and for the area residents to bring forward issues regarding these particular areas and have them addressed as part of the site plan agreement. The application that's entirely before us allows us the opportunity to clean up, which I think is not a top-notch site, and allow it to meld in a more positive way with the neighboring residential properties. It is easy to simply state there will never be any rezonings, spot rezonings at all. And it's easy to simply say, I'm against all of them, and we're not going to ever support any of them. But if we take that position as a council, then we may in fact do a disservice to the community in the long run. Not just to the applicant, but to the people in the community. I've been involved in at least 3 of these applications on this site, and I can tell you other sites, sometimes 4 or 5. At some point, we have to negotiate a settlement to the differences. And it can't be a situation where the developer gets everything they want, and it can't be a situation where the neighboring properties get everything they want. There has to be a medium ground somewhere in the middle that parties can reach the consensus is acceptable to both. I believe the application before us is the best possible solution to the ongoing dispute of commercial and residential properties along this site. I believe if it's approved and the site plans are negotiated as indicated, that we will see a very positive site, improving both the property values of the commercial site and I believe the property values of the neighboring properties as well.
Thank you. Councillor Clarke, and then I have Councillors Acre, Collage, and Pitt Rebecca. Councillor Clarke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be supporting the application that's before us. I think that this application will bring significant architectural improvements to this building, which hasn't exactly been a positive, an outstanding feature in the neighborhood. And I think that the fact that this is going to be an attractive building, an upgraded building, will continue to attract quality tenants in both the office and in the retail sector that is going to be in there. And I would like to further point out, as the applicant did, or his representative did, was that the amount of retail is going to be reduced. So we're actually going to have a reduced square footage of retail as compared to what is there now. And the bulk of the addition will be office. As a matter of fact, all of the addition will be office, and some of the existing retail will be transformed into office. I think that's significant in terms of the amount of traffic and activity that's going to happen there. The comments that were made by some of the residents quoting the other OMB decisions were for previous applications, certainly this location, but the other applications, even though I wasn't on council, I'm somewhat familiar about those applications because of materials that we have received, and the significance in the difference between this application and the others.
Councillors Nicholson, Claude, Councillor Clarke gave you the benefit of her attention. Thank you. Councillor Clarke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The difference in these applications is significant, and I think that it has reflected some of the comments that have come from the neighborhood before. I'd also like to point out, actually, as Councillor Nicholson was just pointing out, Councillor Brian Nicholson, about the types of amendments that have been made to the site plan agreement, because there have been significant issues brought by the community, and I'll list those again because I think they're so significant that I think they should be listed again. The security, lighting, snow removal, grounds maintenance, and noise. All of these items were inserted at the committee level because of the concerns from the neighborhood. They will be dealt with at the site plan agreement level with staff, and the applicant will have to make significant measures to make sure that these items are addressed to the satisfaction of the complaints. There's been every indication that they want to do this kind of thing, that they're going to be very cooperative with the neighborhood. Their public meeting that they had even before the process at City Hall is an indication of their concern about trying to get neighborhood support and neighborhood commitment to this project. And the committee also, in looking at the driveway, another issue that's been brought up, I think we certainly did entertain the idea of keeping that open, which was the applicant's request, as a matter of fact. The idea of entertaining that was dropped when it was realized that, yes, Region did have jurisdiction over that, and that has been, as far as I'm concerned, confirmed by the Region's correspondence with one of our city staff tonight. There may be options for that to be reconsidered based on the kind of problems that the neighborhood is anticipating on Hortop, the kind of traffic backup and the kind of congestion that might result in that side street. But at this point, the region does have jurisdiction over that driveway access. And their concern, of course, is controlled access on Rossland. Now that they have a site plan agreement that's coming up before us, they see the opportunity to perhaps try and improve what they consider an improvement to the safety on that road, and that would be their concern. That would be why they're trying to introduce this. At any rate, I think that this is a significant improvement, as I said, to this commercial location, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Acre.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the applicant here has done a lot of work to try and address issues raised in opposition to this application. Simply put, I believe that those residents who have purchased the property adjacent to the R1A lot proposed for commercial parking made those decisions based on our zoning and official plan. And therefore, I would urge Council to maintain the integrity of the residential area and defeat the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Claude.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll be in support of this recommendation brought forward by the Development Service Committee. I would like to reemphasize some of the things that my ward councillor also mentioned, and that is this will enhance the area because there is a great expenditure of over $1 million to do the new upgrades. The facility will change basically from retail to rental, with VON being the major tenant. And I'd like to reemphasize the things that Councillor Nicholson said to address the concerns of the neighborhood. We have 19 different conditions put forward by our staff and by the committee to make sure this works.
I'd like to remind Council that we had a similar situation on Ward 2, Councillor Gray's and ours ward, on A&C Travel. Now, if you go by there, those individuals have made a very nice job. I'd like to point out that they were nominated for Communities in Bloom in terms of what you can do in a residential area and to do a super job. I'd like to also remind fellow councillors that not too long ago, they approved a parking lot in Ward number 3 in the corner of Ritson Road and King Street. That was a former Esso station, and that's a residential area and is now a parking lot, but the residents came forward. We brought certain conditions and they had a site plan approval and everybody is happy. And I believe with the conditions that we have posed upon the developer here that we will have an enhanced area. And also, something that has not been pointed out, we also are making the applicant here, the owner, under condition number J, the owner agrees to retain a professional engineer to prepare a noise study which addresses the impact of noise generated. So that is another concern, and that is going to be addressed. And I still believe that Pat and Mike's is the best place to buy fish and chips in town, too.
You used to say Tommy's.
Councillor Peter Rebecki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This certainly has been a difficult decision for me to make, but in discussions with the two area councillors and finding out their feelings on it, and in further discussions with other councillors, I found that I think the majority agreed that perhaps it was time that we took a more progressive view in a lot of these areas, and Councillor Joe Collage has mentioned a few that we've gone ahead on. And I think they have enhanced the city of Oshawa. But the reason, I guess, that I'm coming out in support of this one, to my peril, but in any event, I think what we did was take a consensus of where this was going. And the feeling I got was that it was time, I think the majority of the councillors felt it was time that something was done there. I couldn't disagree with that. But I think, as has been pointed out, and I don't want to rehash a whole pile of stuff that's gone through here because there were some great comments being made as to why, but I think this committee has brought forward a great number of concerns and looked at the concerns of the people who live in that area, the parking problems, the lighting, and it goes on and on and on. But I could name them all, but I think I have to be, the reason I'm supporting this is, one, I think it will pass, but the real reason is I think, because it's going to pass, that they require, the one paragraph I'd like to read, if I might, that sold me on this in our committee was that we require the owner to deposit with the city monetary security in an amount to be specified in the site plan agreement as satisfactory to the city to ensure that certain site improvements, such as landscaping, curbing, as per the approved conditions and plans, are carried out to the satisfaction of the city. I think this paragraph is most significant, that we are very dead serious about making sure that all of the issues that the citizens in that area brought forward will be looked after and they will be implemented. Madam Mayor, I have no qualms with supporting this. I know that our staff will make sure that all of these requirements will be there, and I'll be supporting this at this time.
Thank you. Okay. On the main motion as amended.
Madam Mayor, can I have a point of information, please?
Yes, certainly.
Yes, a couple of councillors have said here that this could be an ongoing process of talking to the region about this driveway. I look in the report, and one of the conditions put forward in the report from the region is to close the driveway. That's part of this application. And if we go through with this application, that is done. Now, I see under Section 4, it says that such differences that we've already changed here are not substantial enough to require further public notice or another public meeting. If we now go ahead and try to renegotiate that outside of this application and the agreement we do here tonight, do we now have to hold another public meeting? Because I would gather that that would be a significant difference to the site plan, this look of this application. And I just wondered if
Councillor, the attempt to refer back to staff or committee on that item has been dealt with by council and has lost. It has been made clear that the region has jurisdiction for the road, but that in final site plan, negotiations can take place, but the region has said no when it's their road.
Madam Mayor, I guess what I'm getting at is part of this application is to close the driveway, period. That's part of the application. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If we agree to this application, then we agree to this to be closed. If we then go outside of the application and further try to negotiate the reopening of this driveway, in my mind, this changes the application process, and would we now have to hold another public meeting during, under Section 3417 of the Planning Act, because it changes the application and what we're trying to do with it.
Mr. Hunt?
In my opinion, Madam Mayor, there would not be any necessity for another public meeting.
Under the Planning Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Herald, you had a point of information?
Point of information, Madam Mayor. I think it's important that all members of council look at item number F. And item number F says very clearly that the owner satisfies all the requirements of the Region of Durham Works Department.
Correct. The vote is called. Councillor Dykstra has requested a recorded vote on the item as amended. Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Dykstra. Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Collage.
Yes.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
No.
Councillor Pidrobecki.
Yes.
Councillor Acre.
No.
Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
8 affirmative, 3 negative.
Motion carries. Item number 6, Sid Silver Formals requesting an extension of the temporary sign permit. Councillor Acre questioning.
Question, Madam Mayor, through you to staff, if I could, about, I see that the motion is to give an extension to the temporary sign. Is this the first, and then there's an item number, subsection 3, is that no further extensions be granted. Is this the first time that we've given an extension to this applicant or exception to policy? Can I just get the context of this, because there wasn't a report on this?
Yes. Councillor Nicholson?
It's fair to staff, it was not a staff decision, it was a committee's decision. There was a correspondence. If council recall back at our meeting, I think of July 26th, there was it's in the minutes, there was a request for a 30-day temporary sign that was approved by council. Subsequent to that approval, the applicant wrote a letter to the committee and the council asking that council consider an extension for 60 days. Beyond that 30-day limit is the recommendation of the Development Services Committee that items 1, 2, and 3 granting that extension be approved by council. If council agrees, it was also the opinion that that would be the last extension on that particular temporary sign.
It's just a clarification, it's the second extension we've given this applicant?
No, we gave him a 30-day temporary sign. This is the first extension.
Okay, so
first and only.
The 30-day temporary sign permit was as per council policy?
Notwithstanding council policy.
Notwithstanding council policy.
So they've had one 30-day period. They're requesting an extension, and if this is passed, there would be no further extensions.
Correct.
Okay.
If I could just speak to it, I just, it seems that we're going way beyond council policy on 2 extensions from our policy, and I would, I think that we all deliberate on exceptions to the rule, but a second extension I would find difficult to support. And without any other further information, that would be probably my decision.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Mike Nicholson and Councillor John Gray. Councillor Brian Nicholson. Councillor Mike Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We originally granted this extension, and further to their memo or their, I guess, letter they sent to us, they asked for an extra 60 days. The committee felt that because this was a new business in Oshawa and we wanted to put our hand out, welcome them, they asked if they could have an extra 60 days because they haven't got their customer base in place yet, and the sign would give them exposure on the street to allow people to recognize where their store was. So we thought it was a good business practice, especially with a new customer, to offer them an extra 60 days, but then to tell them under Section 3 that we're not going to keep doing this because it's not policy of the city, but because you're a new business, we'll do it right off the bat. We didn't think it would be a good partnership with a new business coming in to say, no, we won't help you out trying to get a customer base and trying to let people know where you are. So we thought we'd grant them the extra 60 days just to give them that extra time to build up a customer base.
Okay. Councillor John Gray.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to support the recommendation that's in front of us. Just to remind Council, back on July 26th, we did grant a notwithstanding current policy the permission to allow the sign for 30 days. This business complied with our bylaws and our requirements, and in fact, because Council was still in recess, returned the sign. but still feel that it would be beneficial to grow their business, to get this sign back in place, to draw further attention to their business. I should also draw to the attention of council that this particular property, it's at the corner of King and Stevenson Road. There already exist 2 signs, and that is why under the normal permitting process, they had to go for this variance from council. There's two legal notwithstanding signs. I believe there's a sub shop and there's a mattress company. Both of them had mobile signs prior to the passage of the sign bylaw, and therefore preclude any other person from having a sign who moves into that strip plaza and wants to draw attention to their new business. So I think we've been very cooperative, and I think in turn the business has been very cooperative by heeding our bylaws and returning the sign and waiting in good faith for council to render another decision. So I concur with the committee's decision. I support it wholeheartedly, and I would urge my fellow colleagues to support the recommendation in front of us. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
I can't follow that, Mr. Chair. Madam Chairman, I'm going to support what Councillor Gray said.
Okay. On item number 6, those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. Item number 7 is in camera. Are there any questions to the chair of the committee? Councillor Gray.
A memo circulated by the clerk indicating that item 4 would require a recorded vote.
Not to me.
Yes, I got one. It was in my box.
Okay.
Maybe you should be in it.
Thank you.
And that would also apply to the Operational Services Committee's items 4 and 12 as well.
Well, I'll plead that I didn't see it.
Don't feel too bad. Chair didn't see it either.
Yeah, it's your committee, Brian. Item number 4.
Must be in the box. I didn't see it.
Well replacement, 3520 Simcoe Street North, and this would be because the item's over $2,000. Recorded vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Acre. Councillor Boychin.
Item number 4 of Development Services.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra. Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Collage.
Yes.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pitterush.
Yes.
It's 11 affirmative, 0 negative.
Thank you. And Councillor Gray has rightly reminded us that in the report from his committee, 4 and 12 will be recorded. I now have those. Thank you. Are there any questions to the chair of the committee? There being none. Operational Services report. Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Operational Services Committee is pleased to report and recommend to Council our 50th report featuring 23 items.
Items to be questioned. Councillor Herald.
I just want to reiterate my declaration of interest on item number 8.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Yes. 4, 13.
Okay, just a second, please. 4, 13, and the last 23. Mr. Clerk, I don't see item 267 in here. Am I missing it? What page is it in this report?
It's actually come forward without recommendation.
It's exactly, but it's not shown in the agenda.
No.
Okay, because I searched for it. It should have been, I would have thought, in the agenda being shown coming forward without recommendation, because we have half of council. That'll be the in-camera portion, but I couldn't find it. Others to be questioned. Councillor Boychin? Okay, and if council just give me a moment in bringing forward the there's an airport report, and I've got the numbers. That's okay. All right, I have item number 4 pulled. I need to give a comment on 9, so I'll pull that. 13, 22, and 23. That's it? Councillor Mike Nicholson further?
Number 20?
Councillor Pitterbecky?
Also number 20.
Councillor Acre?
I just wanted to reiterate my comments on number 7 and 21.
Those have been noted by the clerk. Okay. On the remainder, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 4, Oshawa Civic Stadium resurfacing of the track and event area. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Madam Mayor, I basically have a number of questions on this one. I understand the tender document. I guess where I'm having a little trouble understanding is the background to this. How did this item come forward? I personally don't recall it being in the budget. Could somebody indicate what budget it was included in and when it was approved?
I don't recall right offhand when it was approved, but it would not have come forward without approval.
Does staff know what budget it was in?
Part of the capital budget?
Was part of capital budget for this year?
It was the capital budget.
All right, I must have just missed it. Okay, the question I'm asking, I guess, is to staff. If staff projected, when they were doing this work, the projected usage of this track, it's my understanding it is barely used. And I'm just wondering, is staff...
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but I can't believe I thought...
Councillor Nicholson may not have used it, Councillor Claudsey, but he does have the floor.
Thank you for leaving me with the floor.
You don't have the track, but you have the floor, okay.
I may not want the track either, unless I get my question answered. The question I guess I'm being asked at this point is, do we have a usage report on how often this facility is being used and whether or not that's reflective of the expenditure of almost $250,000 of city taxpayers' funds?
Councillor, I don't have a report in front of me, but I've been by the facility, and you'll probably notice, sometimes the school competitions and things of that nature, and the usage does appear to be there. I will refer this item to Mr. Bedford, and he can do his best to answer the question.
How many days a year out of 365 is it used? 3.
Madam Mayor, I don't have the figures of usage in front of me. However, in deliberating on the state of the track and the need to spend the $250,000, we did investigate the use. The Civic Auditorium Complex is a regional, we provide both a city and region-wide facility at that location. We provide track meets for the schools from the end of April to the end of June. It is, I don't have the numbers, but it is very, very busy during that time period. Over the year, after that time period, it is used for training of City of Oshawa track teams, Durham Region track teams on a regular basis. Residents of the City of Oshawa use it for fitness, for considerable. They use it for fitness and training. At the present time, Your Worship, once we move beyond the usage, there is an issue that the existing track needs to be repaired. We anticipated spending more money than what's proposed to replace the track to repair the existing track over the next 3 years. So based on both the usage and the economics of replacement versus repair, staff recommended it be approved in the capital budget, and it was, and the construction is here before you now.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson?
Did I hear correctly that the head of the department doesn't know how often the track is used?
I said I didn't have the figures in front of me.
Would you give me a ball? I'm not asking for you down to the last hour, but would it be 30 days a year, 60 days a year? Do we have any estimation of how many days usage we get on that track?
Your worship, in terms of organized track meets, I would
Correct.
think a minimum of 30 organized track meets.
Okay, 30 track meets, those one-day tracks or 2 days?
No, I would think 1 day.
More one day, okay. I guess the question, those are my questions. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I think when we do expenditures on, especially on our major facilities, I think we have a responsibility to tell council how well utilized they are and whether or not we're maximizing utilization. We're spending $250,000 of taxpayers' money on a facility. I don't think it's too much to ask, did we get more than just the tender report and say, spend the money? I think we need the background from our staff as when they're utilized, what is the appropriate payback. It is no different than if we were using any other facility in the city, that we would expect to see an appropriate return, from the expenditure. I think those are fair questions for any councillor to ask, to have that information before us. And, to simply see a line item in a budget is one thing. It says, we're looking at it, or a one-pager. But, the questions when you make expenditures, especially $250,000 expenditures, are not limited to, is this the best price? Is there a return for the facility? Are we getting the usage we want? Are there ways to maximize the usage in order to facilitate a better return? If it's a regional facility and it's serving a regional clientele, are we getting payback from the regional level? Or it's just the taxpayers of Oshawa being forced to pick up that cost? I think it's just general that if we're going to spend this money, there should be a little more backup to this particular document than we're getting, and I hope that we have it in the future, that staff will note that and try to give us a little more backup than simply go spend $250,000.
Councillor Nestor Pitterbecki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to reassure Councillor Brian Nicholson that I've had the pleasure of using the facilities when they were up, and the Civic Auditorium complex as it is now, for walking and swimming and walking in the bubble when it was there. And it certainly would be a travesty, I think, not to proceed and repair the track and get that bubble up as quickly as we can. Again, using it now and still using it, I've been approached by many people who are very interested in wanting to know when are we going to have that thing up. So,
Order. Are we talking about the big track? Talking about the big track, not the bubble?
Yeah, the big track.
Yeah, the big track.
I think Councillor Pitterbecki meant as in a complimentary fashion within the civic complex.
Within the civic complex.
That's how I took it.
That's exactly, as I said, I use the civic and I use the auditorium and I use the bubble and also the track for walking. So I think we should go ahead and get this thing done as quickly as possible because it's well used.
In time for the Ontario Games.
You've got it. It's the Ontario Games, I think, that are coming, and we'll need it for that.
Okay. Further speakers. Councillor Clancy.
I'm surprised that Councillor Nicholson is concerned about the usage of the track. He knows it's used an awful lot, and he forgets about the spin-offs that we get when we do have the regional meets. Our concessions are open, and all you do, Councillor Nicholson, we didn't sell the concessions to anybody. We operate our own concessions. And I'd like to emphasize that, that track is used daily by the residents of the city of Oshawa. How do you measure that in terms of usage? It's used daily.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, I have you. Would you like to close? I have one other speaker, Councillor Dykstra.
I'll close.
Okay. Councillor Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to show my support for having this done. I think it's very important. It's something that our tracks are used on a very constant basis. And with young teenagers in my home and the recognition of how often the young people go out to this track and to do their running and to use it on a regular basis, as well as this past summer season, being home so much, I found out exactly how much the Civic Dome is important, and the Civic Arena and the track and everything is important to the youth of this city and how much it's used. So I'm very pleased to support this recommendation.
Thank you. To close, Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much. I think it's also important just to stress the fact that we are going to have the summer games here next summer. The facility is going to be used. And I think it's important that we put our best foot forward, and rather than having a track and a facility that would clearly need repair, that we keep our municipal infrastructure in good shape. And I have never had any calls from people telling me to eliminate municipal infrastructure or to put dirt over our existing track. And I think it's important that we do try and do our best to manage and preserve the facilities that we have here in Oshawa. And this simply represents a reinvestment back into the structures that we have, so that we will continue to have them for generations to come.
Thank you. Recorded vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Acre. Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Collage.
Yes.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Yes.
11 affirmative, 0 negative.
That's all from the bubble, that was right.
Solidarity. Solidarity forever.
This is easy to spend a quarter million
On item number 9, I had pulled that we've had further discussion with Mr. Cook, and rather than a proclamation, it's actually 4 framed proclamations to be part of their special process at the Samac Art Show. Would the committee be willing to adjust that to 4? They can be done internally, but just to do the 4. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Acre. The amendment would be 4 framed proclamations for their special art show. On the amendment, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the main motion as amended, those in favor? That's carried. Item number 12 requires a recorded vote. And did someone ask to speak to that? No?
No.
I didn't have his name down. Okay, on 12.
Councillor Acre.
Yes.
Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Collage. Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Yes.
11 affirmative, 0 negative.
Excellent. Item number 13, Councillor Brian Nicholson has questioned, and again, at the end, there's one small item that would need to be in camera, but you might wish to do the main part now. It's just an addendum with direction to staff. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
This one raises a real problem with me. I supported this being referred back initially to look at the issue of permanent seating in the park. Staff went out and found a bunch of landscape architects who reviewed another landscape architect, and they all come up with the same answer. The problem is, I'm not sure we've got consulted with the right people. It's like asking an engineer, if you want to give a peer review of the other guy's drawings, sure, but maybe we should ask the people that are actually going to use the facility what they want. I received a number of calls from area residents who are concerned about the issue of removing the permanent seating. And that I can tell you there's nothing I have read in the response in this meeting that convinces me yet that we're moving in the right direction. I believe that we are in fact going to see a deterioration of the green space with this change. Bringing lawn chairs over to a well-used park, especially in inclement weather or in weather that's following an inclement period, means that we're going to see a lot of tearing up of that grass. And I don't buy that you want to put seniors sitting on their hindquarters on wet grass or on cold ground to watch the band shells, or even if you put on a blanket, it's not the easiest process. And I can tell you from my own experience going to see many soccer games and other sporting events in the city, if you bring a lawn chair and that grass happens to be wet or soft, you sink in and you leave a rut or a divot when you remove it. And if you have hundreds of people doing that, your whole grass area deteriorates very quickly. I don't believe we're heading in the right direction. I believe we're actually reducing the quality of this particular facility. And just because someone did it in another area doesn't necessarily mean it's the best option for us. Many seniors have expressed to me their concern that this is an inappropriate choice. that they have not seen reports outlining why the step must be taken. I'm not aware, quite honestly, of any great demand from the community saying take out the permanent seating. There has been some concerns on vandalism that we've had to address, but you can address them administratively without taking away the seats. I just don't understand how you address an issue of a misuse of seats by taking them out. If that were true, we wouldn't have any slides or swings in any of our parks. We would just take them out because somebody might deface them or harm them. We don't do that. We understand that quality in our parks is worthwhile protecting. If we're going to spend up to, I think the number is almost $600,000 of improvements to this park, I believe the option must contain a permanent seating venue. Not that we'll look at it at some point in the future and we'll decide at some point in the future how it works. I think this council should make a commitment, hopefully tonight or at some point, that there will in fact be a permanent seating venue to allow those members of our community, especially our seniors, the appropriate seating for watching the various bandshell concerts. I can tell you from the groups that use the bandshell, they are also extremely concerned, and they've expressed it to me, that this type of venue change may in fact have a very negative impact on the number of people seeing their shows, and they're concerned about that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Herald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak very strongly in support of the recommendation before Council. I think it's important to make a couple of points. First of all, staff did not simply go out and find a couple of other landscape architects to look at this project. Staff were directed by committee and subsequently by Council to undertake a peer review of the original proposal that came to committee and Council. And I think that peer review has been an invaluable process because that peer review has provided an opportunity for a number of issues related to the development of this park to be looked at from a different perspective. And I think if members of Council take the time and the opportunity to read the Operational Services report dated August 23rd, they will see reference to a number of changes that have grown out of the peer review process. I think that in itself has been very beneficial. I think we have come out of that process with the development of a better park. And I feel very strongly that this peer review process will provide the citizens of the city of Oshawa with a park that they can be truly proud of. I was pleased to see in the report the reference to the retention of the heritage aspects of Memorial Park. I think that's a very important, significant direction that may not have been addressed as strongly as it might have been in the original report. I notice also that the corner treatment or the entrance treatment in the new recommendations reflect a careful consideration of the construction of the cenotaph, and I think that's important. So I feel very strongly that we are coming forward with an enhanced recommendation. I have not had one phone call from a senior or any other member of this city with respect to this issue. I think that at the end of the day, and when this project is complete, every member of this council and all members of this community will be very proud and pleased with the actions of this council in supporting this report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify for myself and for any individuals who are a bit confused of Councillor Nicholson's statements, B. Nicholson, if I look on the report from August 31st, it says the changes to the renovation plans include doubling the amount of seating from 10 benches to 20 benches. So my understanding when I had asked the consultant when we went to the area to overview the Memorial Park was, would the plans be to replace these benches? And what type of benches? It was made very clear to me that the benches would be replaced and that these would be more suitable benches to discourage individuals to stay in the park at night and sleep in the park. There would be a divider in between those benches. Also, they would be more of a sturdy bench, but it's like everything else. You have to start from the bottom and scratch away and get prepared to bring in what is good top quality. And also, additions too are the furniture, the site furniture, and the lamps were addressed as well. And I think that is a very important issue regarding towards the seniors and anyone who was walking through the park in the evenings of their concerns, especially later on when we have our entertainment evening and the seniors would be leaving and it would be getting quite dusk and they were quite concerned, and that lighting has been addressed for them as well. So they felt very pleased. Now, I have spoken with many seniors on this issue with Memorial Park, with the benches, with the lighting, with the rejuvenation of the bench, and the history that is kept in within this park. And I believe by the time we go through this whole process, we will be very pleased of what will be of a very historical and memorial park. And I believe the name says it right there, Memorial Park. So I believe that the recommendation from committee is very appropriate at this time and needs to be taken its proper steps.
Thank you. I have Councillors Gray, Acre, and Michael Nicholson. Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate some of the comments already made, that not only did the landscape architect bring forward a good plan to start with, but that it was further improved through the peer review process. I think we have avoided some pitfalls that could have detracted from the park renovation by going through the peer review process. I think it's a misnomer to say that there's no permanent seating. The report that's in front of us tonight indicates that there would be 20 benches. And in fact, there was an amendment moved by Councillor Acre that staff will, in fact, after the first year, review the permanent seating issue to see if changes need to be made. So there's going to be the safeguards put in place that not only are we putting the 20 benches in now, but we will review it. We'll see the success or the failure of this plan. But I think when we look at the plan in its totality, it's a very significant renovation to this park, and I think it's going to be a real enhancement, and I think our citizens are going to appreciate the park even more than they do now.
Okay. Councillor Acre.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to bring forward an amendment to subsection 4, if I have a seconder, that staff be directed to bring forth options for additional bandshell seating within the detailed landscape plan, if I could get a seconder.
I'll second that.
And if I could just speak to that, Madam Mayor. Certainly, the almost $750,000 project we are proposing for Memorial Park is a beautiful plan, and but I think it's important that we get it right, and I don't necessarily think that the hiring of consultants by itself is going to do that. I realize that staff has spent some time speaking with some of the users of the park, but considering the large project that this is, I have myself, through my role on the Oshawa Senior Citizen Center's Board of Directors, tried to speak with the seniors on one-on-one, and I have not seen a support for the significant decreased permanent seating in front of the bandshell. It is certainly true that the peer review brought back some more seating for in front of the proposed plan. However, the seating that is proposed within this plan is at the furthest point in which you could watch something in front of the bandshell. So for those who have not brought over their lawn chairs, and I would submit to you that on a lunchtime, I don't think some people from downtown Oshawa would be keeping their lawn chair in their office. to watch something in the band shell. For those not having their lawn furniture with them, they would have the option of sitting on the grass, which I wouldn't say would be ideal for seating if there was any dampness or dew or coolness in the air, and as well, or sitting at the very back of the performance. So I think this is a very, I really support the renovation of Memorial Park. I think it's a wonderful location within the downtown core that we have to rejuvenate with some very significant and important features within it already. But I do feel very strongly about the issue of seating. And I have been attending events over the summer, and people have really taken advantage of that permanent seating. And I would just submit to you that in terms of my own personal research with people I've spoke to who use the Memorial Park, that it's my findings that they support additional permanent seating in front of the band shell. So that would be my reason for moving the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
I wholeheartedly support the member of the Operational Services Committee who's brought this forward. It's nice to see some openness. It's how there are new ideas being brought forward from committee members.
Well, you just lost the votes there.
I didn't lose a darn vote there when I made that comment, I can tell you. Because I don't think there was an open to that view among them at all. But I think the role of our committee structure is it allows council to express a point of view. And it may not reflect the committee's majority view. I think there is an opportunity here for us to look at other design options. And I believe we would not be doing our job appropriately as council members if we didn't have a chance to look at other design options to see whether or not the option presented by our staff was the best one for us. You know, you can't simply say, okay, well, we can modify it by saying we'll go from 10 benches to 20. Well, we have a little more than 10 benches there now. We have a little more than 20 benches there now. So any way you want to play the numbers, it's not an increase from 10 to 20. It's a radical decrease in the amount of permanent seating that currently exists in the facility. And the perception has been given to us that we're getting almost an either-or scenario. Either you accept this or you don't support Memorial Park. Well, to put it simply, as a member of the council says on many other occasions, that's a crock. Okay? Very simply, there are many of us in this council who support wholeheartedly the intent of where this project is going. But you don't dump on new ideas because they happen to disagree with one small portion. This council has unanimously supported the Memorial Park project from day one, with the exception of the removal of the permanent seating. And those of us that have raised the question have raised it clearly time and again that you have to convince us that the full removal or the reduction down to 20 seats is somehow going to enhance the park. I'm yet to be convinced that that will mean improvement. I would like to see other options. I would like to see some options about what benefits it would have and what impact it may have on the health of our seniors, especially those who may have to come across the streets and carrying their lawn chairs. I guess they're all going to have to go buy a lawn chair and keep it on their balcony. And I know they don't have lawns, but I guess they'll have to go buy a lawn chair in order to have a lawn chair. The concern I have is I can just see it. I really can. I can see a troop of seniors coming from Parkview Place, all carrying their lawn chairs. And I can see them sitting down, and I can see them just creating tremendous ruts in the grass, because that's the nature of what happens with lawn chairs. And then they go back and we'll send our staff out to fix it. That doesn't strike me as being the most optimum use of that facility. Let's look at some other options. Let's not have our blinders on. There may be even a better option out there that an investigation would show for us. Let's give ourselves an opportunity to have the best Memorial Park, not just one that just make do.
Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to speak to this on the full motion, but I'll just do it here in the amendment. I totally agree with the amendment. I'm not looking for a whole new review of the whole park, just the seating. I don't want to see a huge amount of money spent to hire more architects, to look at more architects, to look at staff drawings. I too share the concern over the seating. I look at 20 benches at the back and hundreds of people sit in front of those seniors, and I don't know how far back that is, but everybody here that knows a senior knows that a lot of them can't see the best as they did when they were younger. So what are they going to see here other than just look at, I guess, ahead and listen to music? I would look at an option if all there was going to be 20 benches, putting them to the front on angles, coming down the side a little bit so you can still see through the center. One of the problems I see is with grass, we've all sat on a lawn chair in the grass, and we've all had those plastic lawn chairs buckle underneath us, and before we know it, we're laying on the grass.
Nice drunker chair.
Well,
I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholson, but you invited participation on that one.
I have no problem with that, Madam Mayor, but when a senior does that and sues the city because we didn't produce the seating for that, or a senior gets hurt, broken legs or broken hips or arms or something, even if they don't come after the city, it's still on our conscience for taking away proper seating for what I call, and this is the truth, the only thing that we save here by taking away the seating is money. That's the only reason that the seats are being taken away and not put back, is so that the city can save money. And that's why consultants recommend that no seatings go back, because they don't have to, the cities or whoever does them don't have to spend money in the first place and don't have to keep repairing the seats, period. When we look at places like Ontario Place and that, they have tons of seats, plus they have a grass area to sit in too. Most of these places have seating. They have an adequate area of seating. I remember the bandshell at the C&E still has tons of wooden seats that are in front of the bandshell and a grassy area at the back. I have no problem with that if we want some grassy area. But when I think of the seniors that sometimes have difficulty with walkers and different things just trying to get to the park, to enjoy the park, and that's why we're putting it here, is for everybody to enjoy, trying to drag lawn chairs and maybe a drink with them or a little lunch and all kinds of different things to come to the park.
Water, not scotch.
Councillor Nicholson.
Well, I did mean alcohol, Madam Mayor. I meant drinks as a can of Coke or a coffee or something like that. It's only those certain members of council that maybe have their ears and minds in the gutter.
Oh, Councillor, just a minute. That's going too far in response.
I don't think so, Madam Mayor.
But Councillor Nicholson has the floor. Councillor Nicholson, please.
I think that the only reason that we're taking the seats out is to save money, and it's a shame if we're going to spend this kind of money on a beautiful park, and I think it's going to be gorgeous. To save a little bit of money, we could put metal seats in there, metal benches that cost nothing other than a paint job every 10 years, and I think everybody would be quite happy with that. So I hope when we're looking at the money we're spending, we're not going to go El Cheapo, as we've learned here that people spend money freely at this council, that we'd put some benches in there, or at least look at a study to put more benches in there for the safety of the seniors and the other people that will use the area.
Thank you. Councillor Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I'm pleased to support the motion that Councillor Acre put forward, seconded. If we refer again, and I'm going to speak to the motion, if we look back about the seating again, and if we look at the letter from Ms. Colleen Wingrove, President from Parkview Place Residents Association, they've made it very clear that they would like seating for approximately 30 people and have 10 benches put in. Now, in the report again, I just said we're going to put in 20. Now, we are removing the benches. There's no question about that. But they are going to be replaced back next year unless things have changed, if I'm misunderstanding what I have read over the months. Am I correct? May I direct that to the chair for a moment?
Yeah.
The benches will be put back. They are the appropriate benches that will be put back.
The plan will be done in its totality. And part of the plan is to put in 20 benches.
Yeah. Now, and if you look, thank you to the chair. If you look at in the report too, on page 5, it said particular attention was paid to the bandshell seating area. And it was so directed because there were 5 seniors who attended this meeting with staff to ensure of what they wanted, and they had only asked for 10 benches, and we are going forward with 20 benches for seating for approximately 60 people that would be required. So I think that's very pleasing for the seniors, and I think that concern has been addressed now. Seating will be put back, and I'm very pleased that Councillor Acre is just coming forward to ensure that that is occurring.
Thank you. Yes, okay, we still have another speaker, but also, would you please read your amendment again, Councillor Acre, just to confirm?
Certainly. That's it would to replace subsection 4 of item number 13, that staff be directed to bring forth options for additional bandshell seating within the detailed landscape plan.
And your intention is that the rest of the motion stands, that the approval goes forward, but take one final look at seating?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clarke?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be pleased to support this amendment to the motion. I'm pleased with the doubling of the seating that was originally proposed that went from 10 to 20 benches. In looking at the detailed landscape plan, I'd like to point out at least what I think is what I'm observing is that there's going to be shaded areas where the seating is proposed, and I think this is actually a positive location for seniors, and that many of them, if it's a noonday situation, will not be able to tolerate sitting in sun. So the actual location at the rear end of the seating area is probably quite appropriate, and it also is a level area for them to approach with with their walkers and things like that. As has been pointed out, a lot of them access from the neighboring seniors' buildings with their walkers and their canes. So the existing seating that's proposed is a great step forward, but I would agree with taking a look at seeing if we can provide some additional permanent seating as well, because a lot of the people that attend there might not find it very easy to bring their own seating. I would point out that I've never had a chair collapse on me, and perhaps Councillor Nicholson should try and find some more sturdy seating.
That's one solution.
Thank you. That's the, Councillor Colodzi?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to speak against the amendment simply because on item number 4, it addresses the concerns of all the members of council. It's to monitor the permanent seating for the bandshell upon completion of the renovation of the park and report back to the committee on the review. I mean, it's there.
Okay. I'd like to just add a quick comment as well. This has been my primary concern. I agree overall it's a beautiful plan for the park, and all of the downtown, indeed Oshawa, will benefit from having the bandshell and the cenotaph so wonderfully improved. But I have similar concerns in the seating, distance from the stage, and it's interesting in terms of comments. I have had 2 seniors speak to me, and one very recently at the 90s in the 90s dinner last week at the Seniors Center. And the advantage of going to a party there were 43 seniors who were 90 years or older at the party, but they remember when the bandshell was opened, and they were able to tell me why things were done. And they said originally it was grass, and it was very damp and cold. And that as it came to dusk, the ground got cold, people's feet got cold, and they left the park. And that's why the interlocking brick was put in. And Mr. Bill Askew said the same thing, to sit or stand on the grass became very chilly. So I think it's worthwhile for us. We've come forward with a very beautiful plan, but this amendment simply says, now we're down to one thing that we need to focus on. I've attended the concerts. I don't see a lot of people walking by with lawn chairs, but when they hear the music, they do come in, and you'll get the passers-by as opposed to the people who plan to come for the evening. And I see very few seniors with lawn chairs. They use the benches in the park. So if we can move it forward, but just give one final look, and it's really for next year. So on the amendment, which would delete the current 4 and ask staff to provide further options. Do you ask for a recorded vote? Yes. Councillor Acres requested a recorded vote on the amendment.
Councillor Acre. Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
No.
Councillor Herald.
No.
Councillor Colodzi.
No.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Yes.
That's 8 affirmative, 3 negative.
The amendment carries. I would ask that this item either be referred to the in-camera portion or tabled until after the in-camera portion. Information I received today that would just give us one more edge on it. But it has to be a confidential item. Councillor Boychin? Okay, we refer it to the in-camera portion just before the final vote. On a seconder on the referral, Councillor Pidrebecki. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 20, traffic control signals opposite Ritz Enrolled School. And this is the region saying whether they believe they need to do something about the lights. I have Councillor Mike Nicholson and Councillor Pitt-Rebecki. Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I read the letter from the, I guess, Mr. Swartz from the region of Durham, and he says that this traffic control signal complies to all the other traffic control signals that are, I guess, the same size and width and road and all that around the region. I've gone to this intersection many, many times, and we've just put a traffic person there ourselves, a crossing guard. But I've gone to all these signals on Ritson Road. I've dealt with this problem when I was a school trustee and still doing it now. And the only thing I can figure is that whether it complies with the regional plan, the region should look at it as making the lights longer. And hopefully the regional councillors here will take that to their committee there and look at delaying it a little bit more. Residents have sent letters to the region. I've sent letters to the region as a trustee and a councillor. And it's just not enough time for the little kids to get by. It's okay for the adults walking the kids. It's okay for maybe kids grade 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8. But when you look at the little kids, and some of them still have to walk themselves to school that are only 5 to 8 or 10 years old, they're running across the lights, and the cars don't always stop there. That is one of the reasons we put a school crossing guard there, because we're having problems there with the GM traffic racing up that road to get home or to get to work, and they're flying right through the lights. So for the little kids, it may be the city saying, or the region saying that it's enough time, but it isn't. And hopefully the regional councillor here, all of you that are on works, or just make a motion to the region to investigate from a regional point of view and extending lights that are similar to these to a longer period of time. 15 or 20 seconds to a car sitting there is not a long time, but if a child gets hit and killed because they can't cross the street in enough time, or a crossing guard gets hit because there's not enough time to go across, then it's it's very bad. It's a shame that nothing was done beforehand. So I guess I just bring this from I guess Councillor Pitt-Rebecki. He's probably going to say almost the same thing because he's probably heard from the residents that it's not enough time. Whether the region says it or not, it's not. Hopefully this council will take it forward to the region.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt-Rebecki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support Councillor Mike Nicholson with his comments with regard to the signal. I'm a little concerned that perhaps it hasn't been studied enough, and I'm not quite sure where we go with this. I'd like to possibly refer this back to our own staff for further study. That is a very treacherous area at certain peak hours of traffic. And unfortunately, they
Councillor, rather than arguing it, if you wish to refer it, you need to make the motion.
You're not giving me any leeway at all today, are you? Okay. And I think we should, I'll just refer it back to staff for a report on that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so your motion is to refer back to staff for further consideration of?
Options to go forward to the region of Durham for extension of the crossing signal.
Is that what I heard you say,
That sounds
Councillor Pitt-Rebecki?
appropriate, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and it's seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson on the referral. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
So I understand the process that's been used to date, but I will support the referral more likely, but I just want to understand the process. We received a letter back from R. Swartz, Traffic Operations Manager. Was this not a referral from this council to the regional municipality?
Okay, and the
motion.
motion.
When do staff members at the regional level start responding for the regional council?
Okay, this is just, this response is just for information. But who could speak to Mr. Dignan? Mr. Gray, Councillor Gray?
As I recall, the recommendation that came forward from committee was that we hire the crossing guard, and we asked the region just to review the signalization, and if there could be any improvements made to the visibility of this particular intersection where the children are crossing, because it is a mid-block intersection. And so we wanted to see if, an amber light or something could be added, or, a warning sign, whatever. We've gotten the response from the region.
There was a council
and the timing, and there was a timing issue between the lights from down at Olive and Ritson up to the mid-block intersection. That was the timing issue.
I think where Councillor Nicholson is going is that this should have gone to the Regional Works Committee.
It should have gone to the council of the region to be referred to the Works Committee for investigation. What I'm concerned about, and I've seen it happen twice now from the region, that somehow the Regional Works Department staff have taken upon themselves to respond on behalf of the Regional Council on traffic matters. And with all due respect to those individuals, who I'm sure are trying to do the best they can, they don't make the decision.
Okay.
The regional council
Excuse
does.
me, we're on a referral motion at the
I understand
moment.
the clarification.
And I think we would have to check on how the letter was addressed to the region as to whether it was addressed to staff or to be considered by regional council.
Well, that's exactly where I'm going, Madam Mayor. I was wondering if staff, when they report back, if the referral carries, could also include in that the process of how they undertake the investigation?
Okay, so the motion is to refer back to committee for clarification on potential issues related to the site and how did this go to the region in the first place? Okay, on the referral motion, those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item number 22, consideration of parking regulation changes on Gibbons and Nipigon Streets adjacent to Nipigon Park. Councillor Boychin.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to ask through the chairman to Mr. Dignan, have the fencing issues along Gibbons Street been addressed to the satisfaction of the residents in the area?
Fencing's on Nipigon.
At the residents?
To you, Madam Mayor, the residents on Gibbons Street, there were 11 impacted, and we were able to contact 7 of the 11, and they were in support of the recommendations as outlined in the report, which includes a 1.2 meter high fence. There was a concern expressed by a couple of residents of the possibility of a higher fence, so the 1.2 meter was the compromise.
And they've expressed their satisfaction with that?
The majority have, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. On item number 22, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 23, review of crossing guard at locations where traffic control signals have been installed or are contemplated. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
A couple of questions again, because I don't know what this means. Does receive information mean thank you staff for telling us, but go have a nice day? Or does receive information for this committee mean staff go ahead and do it, we won't debate it at council? Which one does it mean?
To whom are you directing your question? Councillor
I'm assuming
Gray?
that I'm doing it to the chair of all. What does receive for information mean?
Councillor Gray.
In this particular case, staff are going to do just a routine evaluation and analysis of the merits of the crossing guards at certain locations where safety improvements have been made. As you have probably noticed in the report, each and every step,
point of order.
council
I
will
asked
have
what it
an
meant,
opportunity.
not debate it.
Will have the opportunity.
He's answered what my question.
Oh. Councillor Gray.
Council will have the opportunity at each and every step to have full input, including input from the councillors whose wards are impacted.
Well, I guess the question, that this information, I can read it as that the steps proposed by staff have been endorsed by the committee.
They will be proceeding, yes.
Thank you. Well, I have a problem with one point of it, and it's only because...
Excuse me, they would be recommended by the committee to this council, and should this council
Staff
do
will
this
be-
this evening, then the
And-
process will proceed to come back to council eventually.
Staff will keep us informed all the way through.
And council will
There'll be
decide.
lots of input, absolutely.
But hold on here. That's the problem I'm raising here, is that if staff suggests a course of action, the committee concurs. Committees don't make decisions, any committee. They recommend to council that a certain action be concurred with. And therefore, the motions that come forward, and I know it was the staff wording, should say that the committee concurs with the recommended action of staff. And if council agrees or disagrees, we'll debate that. To say receive for information can be read almost anyway. So I think staff need to review the wording. Secondly, we're reviewing a crossing in one area, and that's to the corner of Ritson and Wolf Street, when the next 30 to 40 days, they may be building a brand new school in a completely different location. It just strikes me as absolutely strange that we've gone through a process, and the city staff have been involved in this process at a planning level, that we would go through a traffic analysis on a crossing guard that would, to address a school that may longer be open a year from now. It would seem to me as absolutely premature to undertake this investigation until the school board decides exactly where the school is going to be. And then we can review the crossing guard situation when we know where the school is going to be. But to review it now and to whatever, investigation you would get now might be totally redundant and have to do it again 6 months from now. I'm also concerned, and I guess and I want to see some clarification, it's just how this is going to be addressed to the general population. Because it's one thing to say you go to parents' councils, and I guess, some parent councils are very active and you have 50 or 60 people out of them, and some parent councils have, for unfortunate reasons, are lucky to get 3 or 4 people out at the meeting. What assurance can the ward councillors have that the changes being contemplated by staff will be fully circulated, not by the parent council or the school board, and I stress, not even by the ward councillor, but by the staff that's doing the investigation, so they may in fact hear what the public's concerns are regarding those locations prior to any recommendations back to council?
Councillor Nicholson, I think if staff just review the crossing guard situations, come back to committee, they can be fully discussed. We can expand upon it. We can invite delegation after delegation to come into committee if that's necessary. But these are just routine reviews because there's been changes at those locations. For example, the IPSs have been put in. That these are routine, that you would simply review these situations. Now, I would suggest that your comments on the Ritson and Wolf is very appropriate, and I'm sure staff will take that one under advisement immediately. But there have been changes in many other intersections. I think it's important that we at least have the review, but by the same token, have full input by you as a councillor in the impacted areas, and if you feel that there's certain people that need to be notified, if there's a recommendation that you feel would be contrary to the interests of those people in that area, then by all means, we'll hear them out. And as I say, there's going to be full consultation with the ward councillors. That's the whole point. But I think there's at least got to be a review to find out if the needs are still warranted, if they're unwarranted, whatever. But let's at least implement the review and then take it from there. Let's not jump to any conclusions that decisions are being made to eliminate. I don't want to scare anybody because that would be false, but there should be at least the review. And I can tell you, in my ward, we put in an IPS at Thornton and the Civic Auditorium, basically. We hired an additional crossing guard to alleviate the safety concerns until that IPS goes in. And we said when the committee hired the extra crossing guard that there would be a review. And lo and behold, it's part of that review process. So I'm putting that one right on the table right now, that's out there, and that but there's going to be full opportunity for the residents in that area to have comment to the committee and to council.
If I can continue then, I guess the concern I have is that I as a ward councillor don't appreciate having to run behind putting out works departments or operational departments bonfires. If there's a concern from area residents that there's a crossing guard should be removed, who's pushing this? I can tell you, I've never had any residents in my area call me up and say, we really think that crossing guard at Ritson and Wolf should be taken out. We don't need it anymore. We work our tails off as councillors to get IPSs put in, to get things to enhance safety, make things better, and we barely get them in the ground before someone decides, well, boy, now that we've got that in the ground, here's a great way to save some money, and we'll take out some crossing guards. But there's never any input from the community prior to somebody wanting to decide, hey, we'll designate 7 locations to go take a look. And if you think that you can designate them and have somebody report them in the newspaper that they've been designated, everyone's to remain calm and be happy and say, we're just looking at it. You don't look at something unless you have a pretty good idea where you want to go. And my concern is there's only one reason of this investigation to be undertaken, is so that the city could look at a possibility of removing some of these locations to save a few $1,000s. That's the only reason it's being brought forward. The community hasn't demanded it. The school council hasn't demanded it. The neighborhood hasn't demanded it. And I can tell you from my perspective, the ward councillor hasn't asked for it. So it must be about money and very little about public safety.
Councillor Nicholson, I can assure you, our committee is always concerned about safety.
Councillor Gray, you'll be welcome to close. The item is an information item for this evening. All actions will come before council. Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too share Councillor Brian Nicholson's concern. When I look at some of these crossings, I look at one in Councillor Pitterbeck in my ward, Wilson Road and Taylor. The IPS has been there for many years, so is the crossing guard, and that's a huge area for the kids to cross from one section to another. As soon as this hits the paper that we're looking at this for a review, don't think that people are going to sit in their houses and say, oh my God, nothing's going to ever happen, because something will happen. And I'll get the phone calls, and staff will get the phone calls, and there'll be people coming before here, and the trustees will be involved, and blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. And it's going to be not a win-win situation for this council if they decide that they want to change this. It's going to be a lose situation. And Councillor Brian Nicholson's right. In my mind, this is only to look at saving money. There would be no other reason to remove a crossing guard from an area now that's there now. If we've deemed that it was necessary at one point, it's still necessary today. Whether there's lights or not, it's still necessary because the lights are just an enhancement to the crossing guard to help that person. To remove one, or to look at removing one, is just a cost-saving measure, period. No more. And I guess my question is, where did this originate from? I don't know anybody that asked this to be done. Was it a staff member or a department head or somebody from Works or whoever, who initiated this review to go to the committee? Because I don't believe the operational committee said to a staff member, can you bring crossing guards to us so we can review them? Who did it?
We haven't had a review yet.
Is that, Councillor Gray will be closing. Is that a direct question to Councillor Gray now?
Well, it's a direct question to whoever initiated it.
Okay, Councillor Gray?
Well, the report was not written by myself. I would have to put that over to Mr. Dignan. But the committee did not initiate the report. The report just, I'll save it for my closing. Mr. Dignan.
Okay, Madam Mayor, then I'll...
Okay, Mr. Dignan is going to answer your question.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The report originated by staff, and it's as a result of our typical review of levels of service for all functions that the department and services that we provide. These signals have either just been installed or are being contemplated, and we feel that there is a responsibility to look at this with respect to level of service and the level of safety provided at these intersections. And the report was for information to inform council that we were proceeding with this review in accordance with the council-approved procedure that's set out in the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the next question, and I would, address it to Mr. Dignan then, seeing that it originated from that staff office. Are these the only 7 that the staff would be proposing to be looked at now? Or if we get these or don't get these, would we then look at other ones? Or are these the only 7 in the whole city of Oshawa that department feels should be looked at this time?
Through you again, Madam Chair. These 7 locations have been identified because either signals have just been installed or they're being contemplated. And that's the reason these 7 are coming forward at this time. That doesn't preclude a review of any other locations in the city should it be deemed necessary.
Well, I'm going to oppose this out of principle. I think that this is a money-saving look. We've heard staff here, and I believe that that's part of staff's job, and it's nothing against staff. But staff here at the city always looks at how to reduce money, how to save money. I think that's the only reason we're looking at this. The only reason staff are looking at this right now is so they can save money. And I believe that whether the signals are or whether the crossings are there, one enhances the other for the safety of the kids. And to pull an intersection away for $8,000 a year for the safety of the children going to school, I think is totally ridiculous. I think there's other things that staff could be looking at to save money in this city rather than the safety of our children, and I'm totally opposed to this. If this was something that staff normally does, then do it. You don't have to come to committee to do it. Go out, review this, and if you find there's a problem, then come to the committee and say, we think there's a problem here, let's do a study then. Don't make this a hornet's nest. If it's a normal review process, do your normal jobs, but don't bring it to committee until you find that there may be a recommendation from staff on the problem. If you don't need committee's permission, why is it here now?
Excuse me, Councillor, are you suggesting that staff should go and do things without telling us and give us a surprise at the end? Or, in the contrary, that staff should follow policy the way they've done and followed council direction?
So they should come here all the time to do things?
Surprise.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Digman said that this is... Mr. Digman just said that this was part of their normal review. If this is part of their normal review and council policy, then go out and do it, and if you find that there's a problem in those intersections, then bring it to the committee for a recommendation.
Okay,
I believe that they do that every day here at the city. They do not come to us for permission every day. And all I'm saying is, don't stir up a hornet's nest in the community. If it's your policy and your procedure to do it, then go out and do it.
Councillor Gray, I assume you'll wrap up and you'll speak to that issue. Councillor Dykstra, I didn't have your name down. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the two councillors are making a mountain out of a molehill here. And be quiet, I'm speaking. And I really feel if they read the report, they would have a better understanding. It is clearly here in the report 2.0, I'll even give you the page, 280-2, that the review of the school crossing locations would involve consultation and input from affected school community councils, Durham Regional Police, ward councillors, principals, superintendents of the Board of Education, in accordance with the council approval procedure. So nothing's happening except coming back for information. I really feel the recommendation before us is appropriate and I support it.
Thank you. To close, Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm going to just read a section out of the report on 280-1. The purpose of the report is to make committee aware of the fact that there are several school crossing locations that have been or will be modified by the region through the addition of some form of traffic control signals, and a school crossing guard presently exists. So we've listed off the 7 locations. There's going to be a review. If we look at the section 3.3 found on page 280-3, and I'm just going to read you, the Director of Transportation and Parking Services submits a report to the Operational Services Committee with copies to the councillors in whose ward the crossing is located. At the conclusion of the discussion on this item at the Operational Services Committee, the process is either terminated at this point or advanced to the next step, depending on the direction of committee. As I was saying, they're going to do the review. There's going to be, the full opportunity for everyone to have their input, and in some cases, it'll probably just be terminated. Some, I don't know, maybe they will go forward. I can't predict. I don't know. I haven't seen a report because the report hasn't been written. But I think what's very important is that, when we talk about stirring up hornets' nests, I think we've got to understand that, I think we've got some agitators here who are trying to presuppose a report, who are trying to get people agitated when we haven't even seen the report. Let's just wait, let's be calm, let's see the report, and we can make a decision from there. I have not jumped to any conclusions here. I don't believe any other member of council will jump to conclusions. Let's just see the report, and let's, for goodness sake, not get people all agitated over nothing yet. Let's just wait and see, please.
Thank you. I'd like to add one comment. Staff have done their job in reviewing things under council procedures and have kept council informed so council can make decisions. That's all that's happened. On the motion, those in favor? The motion is to receive for information.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
No.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
No.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Yes.
Councillor Acre.
Yes.
Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Collage.
Yes.
It's 9 affirmative, 2 negative.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Chair of the Operational Services Committee? Councillor Clarke.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Because we've assumed this particular responsibility, I'd like to ask the Chair of our committee, if he could indicate to me when I'm supposed to pay my city taxes. I have yet to receive my bill, and I'm anxious to pay my taxes like all the other residents in the city of Oshawa. By this date, at the end of September, I will have paid my full installments, but I don't know when my tax bill's arriving, and I know a lot of residents in the city of Oshawa would like to know that. I wonder if
Someone
you could-
might refer you
Thank
to
you.
the report that's in the agenda tonight, Councillor.
I saw that, but
Thank
I'm
you. We
asking.
have an
Oh, you saw that one.
I saw
Okay.
that.
And
We have a problem.
it's under Councillor Herald because it's the Strategic Initiatives
I
Committee.
know, but that's, it's
Well,
weird.
once you handle Councillor Herald's report, you'll understand why Operational Services can't send out the tax bills.
No, I know that, but the community doesn't know that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, well,
Thank you very much for the question. As you probably know, we don't actually have the assessment numbers.
I know that.
And we have set our budget. We've done everything that we need to do, but the province, through their whatever, have not been able to give us the assessment numbers. The assessment is essential for the calculation of the tax bill. I mean, it's basically that simple for calculating the tax rates. As soon as we get those numbers from the province, I'm sure our staff will be very pleased to grind out the tax bills and get them in the mail.
I would add, as members of council are aware, I'd had extensive dealings with our staff with the Office of the Minister of Finance, and we were given every assurance, and as you know, we extended our deadline to try to get the province to recognize the difference in our community and other industrial communities because we receive less funding because we have a smaller residential base. I've written another letter to the ministry saying that there's an irony that exists. I sent this out a week or so ago, saying that because your ministry cannot provide us with the numbers upon which we base our tax bills, we can't send out our tax bills, and therefore, Minister, you still have time to do the right thing by the city of Oshawa. So making another stab at it, we might just as well try. And there's a new executive assistant, and we're giving it another try. Now, the other thing is tomorrow at Regional Finance, I understand the reports are supposed to be available. Our area treasurers have not yet received them as of today. Councillor Nicholson, do you know if they're coming forward as Chair of Finance?
No, I don't know if. It is our intent at the region to have something to inform the regional councillors of the status of the promises, and I call it the OCRAP process, because I think that's what everyone says every time they look at the document, they look at it and they go, oh crap. It just is horrible.
You've coined a new terminology.
They're really in a system that is falling apart to the province right now. And I'm told by our regional staff that we are no closer today to rectifying the problems in the assessment information than we probably were 60 days ago. Because every time, it's like a hydra. Every time they slash off one head, 8 more seem to grow out of the stump, and they're at it again. And I can tell you that the staff of all the local municipalities, the regional municipalities, the province, throughout all parts of this problem, everyone's working overtime to try and get to the bottom of this. But it doesn't seem to be making a tremendous amount of progress. I am hopeful, and Mr. Clapp's hopeful, that tomorrow we might see at least a date to which we can respond to provide the information to the municipalities, local municipalities. What effect that will have on what date the taxes go out, who knows? Hopefully before the end of millennium.
So Councillor Clodsey, the answer is that we are going to have to adjust our bylaw that set our tax dates because the Ontario provincial tax system is not appropriately online. So the area municipalities and the region cannot finalize the rates. And as is shown in the report, we figure even a 1-month delay is going to cost us another 100,000 plus for a total in the year of 700 plus. Theoretically, we can bill the province, but I don't see how the province is going to be able to pay this for everyone. And so I say, not facetiously at all, we're trying again with the ministry because we've been very badly done by, and for the first time in 8 years had to raise our tax rate, absolutely, solely, exclusively the responsibility of the province. Okay. Further questions to Councillor Gray? Councillor Clodsey.
No question, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a recess for 15 minutes.
Okay, we have one more report, Strategic Initiatives Committee, then we'd be going in camera. Are you prepared to do? It's going to be lengthy? Councillor Herald? I'm sorry, as chair of the committee, would you rather?
I think we should take a short break, Madam Mayor. And,
okay, 15 minutes. We'll have the Strategic Initiatives Committee. Then we will have a few items for in camera. Members of Council, if we can reconvene the meeting. We are up to Council, we call it Council and Committee of the Whole and Strategic Initiatives Committee. The first item is a report on behalf of the Strategic Initiatives Committee, and then we also have a report from the City Manager that we need to move in terms of tax rates, et cetera, that we've just had the discussion on, and it's in the grouping with Strategic Initiatives Committee, but there was a discussion during the break that obviously it is still Councillor Gray's committee that would be handling any of the billings. Councillor Herald, Strategic Initiatives Committee, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Strategic Initiatives Committee is pleased to bring forward its report and recommendation on governance reform in the region of Durham.
Excuse me, Councillor, may I just check with the clerk? Mr. Clerk, in terms of the protocol of distribution, a draft was given to members of council. The final report is just done from the meeting today. Do we need to waive the rules to ensure that we've covered it?
Madam Chair, I believe a motion to introduce would be appropriate.
Okay. As the final report was only made available this afternoon, would you please do a motion to waive the rules in order to allow the introduction?
Pleased to move a motion to waive the rules to introduce.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Pidrebecki.
No.
On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Sorry for the interruption, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said a moment ago, the Strategic Initiatives Committee is pleased to bring forward to Council its report on governance reform in Durham Region. This report is intended to stimulate a dialogue for constructive change, and the committee is unanimous in its conviction that governance change is about to occur. All of you have seen today's editorial in the Toronto Star. I think it is a very timely editorial. It's interesting that this editorial appeared on the same day that this committee is bringing forward its recommendations to Oshawa Council. Those of us that were at AMO certainly came away with the strong conviction that significant change is about to occur throughout this part of Ontario. There is no doubt in my mind, based on the comments of Minister Gilchrist, that this change will happen. And I think it is the will of the provincial government that significant change essentially will result in fewer municipalities and in fewer politicians and a general streamlining of the process. The report that's before Oshawa Council this evening recommends a path that advocates to the region and its governance committee that they reconsider their approach and provide a more collaborative and cooperative approach in the issue of governance. This report also recommends that Regional Council and the Regional Governance Committee expand its mandate to include the governance and service realignment options that would include all of the realistic governance option. Our committee believes that the recommendations contained in this report will lead to a fully cooperative approach that will provide a range of options that this council and regional council will be allowed to lead to better government, more efficient government, and more productive government, while at the same time meeting the stated objectives of the provincial government. Madam Mayor, I have great pleasure in moving the recommendation of the Strategic Initiatives Committee. These recommendations are quite straightforward. The recommendation is that Durham Regional Council be requested to refer back to the Regional Governance Committee the Regional Governance Committee's approach to date in order, A, to reconsider this within the context of a more collaborative and cooperative approach that has already successfully been undertaken by the region through its regional local planning system review, and B, also that the cooperative approach currently being employed by the region together with local municipalities in the review of downloading of Provincial Offences Act responsibly. Further, that given the August 23rd, 1999 announcement by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing confirmed that the provincial restructuring agenda for two-tier municipal structures, including a direction to reduce further the number of municipalities, the Regional Governance Committee expand its governance/service realignment options to include all realistic governance options. And further, that the Region Governance Committee be directed to defer any action not related to this resolution until it reports back to Regional Council on the foregoing. Madam Mayor, those essentially are my comments. I believe the report that's in front of committee provides sufficient background and detail for the logic of the recommendations that are being brought forward, and I would urge every member of Oshawa Council to support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
First of all, just to get on the record, I'd ask for a recorded vote at the appropriate time, so we get everyone's position on record. I want to applaud the Strategic Initiatives Committee. I think they've brought forward a report that is very clear in trying to present the position that Oshawa has been working on a number of years now to try to present to Council at the region to look at the issue of governance. As Oshawa's representative, I guess, on the Regional Governance Committee, I believe this approach is consistent with the positions I've taken and that have taken of other municipalities at the Governance Committee that we represent, unfortunately, a minority view at this point. It's my hope that all member municipalities of the Durham region will look at this document with great care. That in fact, we'll take a long, hard look at the comments that are made in the document, that realize that this is an opportunity for them to involve themselves to a much greater role than they have to date on the issue of governance, and allows an opportunity for all 9 municipalities, the region and the municipalities, to work cooperatively towards a process that reflects the needs of our entire population. I think it's important for everyone at this council and at the regional council to understand that the directions given over the last few years by the provincial government and reiterated on August 23rd have not changed. And for those that seem to think they can either outlast this government or somehow change its mandate, I believe they're fooling themselves. I think that this government, as we've seen on many issues, will not be dissuaded from its course of action, and I don't believe it will be delayed in its course of action either. I think we have an opportunity over a limited time frame to react to initiatives such as brought forward by the Strategic Initiatives Committee in a positive way before we find that the process of decision making may in fact be taken away from us. I, for one, as an elected representative here in Durham and in Oshawa, do not want to see a situation where elected representatives from other parts of this province, i.e. members of the cabinet, are making the decisions on local governance reform for our community. We've already seen how open they are to the needs of our community when they established the Greater Toronto Services Board. Despite a referendum that said 95% of the people don't want to be part of the process, the government simply said, sorry, we don't agree, we're ramming it down your throat and you're going to be part of it. I think that puts a very clear warning to us and to all our member municipalities in Durham. If we don't find a made in Durham and a made in Oshawa and a made in Clarington and a made in Ajax solution here, then we're going to have a made in Queen's Park solution. And I think that would be just an horrendous situation. I feel that the template has been struck by the province, and I think you're going to see those announcements in the next, within the next 90 days when they look at implementing what's happening in Hamilton and Sudbury and Ottawa. And if those municipalities don't come to an agreement on what they can support, I would not be surprised to see the province very unilaterally saying, we're looking at maybe one municipality for the entire lot of you, whether you like it or not. I have not supported the mega city approach for Durham, will not support it. I think it's an absolute error. Our regional council has stated overwhelmingly, I think there's only 1 or 2 votes, that is the worst possible option, and the report addresses that. But I think the most important thing that we have to take out of this report is that we have to sit down and talk. And not simply talk about a fire department or a roads department or some other department that's a minor finagling about the boundaries. We need to look at the big picture, look at the entire range of services that we provide in governance in this region, and start looking, as the report says, to include all realistic governance options. If you don't do that, then you don't have a governance approach. You have a service realignment approach. And I believe that we need a governance approach to address these issues. So I support the committee. I hope all members of council do. I think it's an appropriate step, and it's an opportunity for the region and all our member municipalities to come to the table and talk, as opposed to right now when we're not talking at all.
Councillor Pedro Becky.
Yeah, just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I certainly do agree with the previous 2 speakers. Of course, the chair of the Strategic Initiatives Committee, Herald, and I'm a part of it, along with yourself, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to bring this report forward, to be a part of it. Without going over the same dialogue that's already been expressed, I certainly do agree, as I said earlier. But I think one of the main things we have to look at, and I'm just going to, if you'll just bear with me, this editorial that was in the Star, and it's timely, as Herb Herald has said, that it came at the same time as we're bringing forward our initiative to the Council. Politicians should be talking. The potential benefits of restructuring include a streamlined bureaucracy and improved delivery of city services. For now, Municipal Affairs Minister Gilchrist has said he's content to wait until local politicians come up with their own ideas for restructuring. And the key to the whole thing, I think, is this last sentence. But he won't wait forever. So I just want to say that we have tried to be proactive in the last several years with the region. I think they've neglected to give us any attention at all with any of the motions that we brought forward. We've attempted very quietly to talk with other area municipalities, but as one said, I guess they'd like to be courted before they get married, and I'm not sure. I think this message is the courtship message that's going out there, that we're prepared to talk and that we should all sit down and talk and see what we can come up with as the best. My immediate fear is that we still have far too many politicians in the Durham region who have their heads buried in the sand. And the only problem with burying your head in the sand is that you expose the other end. And I'm afraid it'll be sticking up, and one of these days it'll get whacked. And it'll get whacked so hard that maybe we won't recover the way we want to recover. So I think the timing is perfect. I think it is now that we become more proactive, listen to our neighbors, talk to our neighbors, and see what we can do to get along and come up with the proper kind of governance in this area that we're all going to be happy with. It's not going to be easy, but it's a major start. And I just, as I said before, I'm very happy to be a part of this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good. Councillor Boychin.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to endorse or lend my support to the motion that's before this council. I too believe that the time has come, or is long past due, with respect to restructuring the regional government at the region of Durham and the local municipalities. I don't think it's any secret that I don't necessarily support the views of some of my fellow councillors. But I think it's important, as was pointed out in that article that was in the Star today, that it's time that we talk, and we talk seriously. I don't know. I have my own views of what I think is the best, but from my perception, but I'm open to persuasion if somebody can demonstrate, or an independent study or whatever can demonstrate that there is a better, more efficient way of delivering services to the taxpayers of the City of Oshawa. And I think as councillors for the City of Oshawa, it is incumbent upon us to explore all avenues as to how we can deliver services more cost-effectively to the citizens of Oshawa, and perhaps beyond the City of Oshawa, but in Oshawa in particular. And I think if we don't explore all those options, even though some of those options may be painful to this city and to this council, I think we're abdicating our responsibility as councillors. And I find it somewhat disconcerting that when we have applications, whether it's here at the city or at the region, such as we've had tonight with a developer or a proponent bringing forth an application, and we have, special interest groups or interested groups of citizens that are opposing applications, and we seem to state to them as politely as we can that times change. The city has to grow and change, and it can't be stagnant. And yet we have run into the situation where politicians, when change may affect them, all of a sudden start standing up and screaming and hollering, no, we can't change, we don't want to change, we like it the way it is. And they talk out of both sides of, some of us, some councillors talk out of both sides of their mouths. And, or I think there's another expression is speak with forked tongue. So I guess the bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, I think we have to come to the table, or get to the table with the other municipalities, whether it's looking at service realignments, looking at reorganization of councils, elimination of some councils, whatever it is. And I don't believe, based on what I've been able to determine about what's going on with this governance committee at the region, sadly to say, I don't think they're accomplishing what it was hoped that they would accomplish. And I think basically they're spinning their wheels. And I wholeheartedly support this recommendation. As I say, at this point, I don't know where it will lead, but I'm prepared to have an open mind and keep an open mind on this. And I will probably in the end, I don't say probably, I will support in the end whatever scenario is the most cost-effective in delivering effective services to the citizens of Oshawa, or whatever area is deemed to be appropriate for this as a service delivery area. So I support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Clarke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too support the report that's come before us from Strategic Initiatives. I think it's very significant that we're in such a time of change that we look at all the options, that all the options be put on the table. And I don't think that that's what's happening in the process that's occurring to date at the region. And it's unfortunate because when we started this process off, it was at a regional retreat, and we had great discussion there with regard to form following function. I certainly don't think that that's what's happening now in the process. And we spoke to that in the meeting this afternoon, but that form follows function, I think that's really important, because that means that you're dealing with something holistically, and you're dealing with it so that you're analyzing all aspects, but you're not just taking little pieces of it and trying to pattern them in order to either preserve what's existing. What we have now is not a complete analysis, and I think that that's what our request is to the region, to see that we deal with this, as I said, in a holistic manner, so that we've got the best possible solution that's coming out. I don't think we're going to get that by bisecting and trisecting and taking very narrow little perspectives on very minor areas. Actually, not minor areas, they're major areas, but it's still not being looked at in a whole way. We've already had an indication from MPPs that have spoken to Council previously, saying that there is a monitoring of this process, that if we aren't doing the appropriate thing, then they may just have to do it for us. We've been told that without any any equivocation. So I think for us to sit back and think that we can take a very narrow point of view and realign a couple of little areas within the region and think that that's going to be satisfactory when we've seen the kind of radical change that has been imposed on other regions and other areas of the province, and we're one of the last ones to be left alone, so to speak. I think it's just we're literally the last ones to be done unto if we don't do it to ourselves. Or do it for ourselves, I think is more appropriate. We need to do it for ourselves or be done unto. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Gray.
Councillor Nestor Pitterbeck referred to the courtship by Minister Gilchrist. I think we should keep in mind too that it's the shotgun weddings that we've got to avoid, and by being proactive, by looking at the options, I think we can control our destiny, and I think we need to look at the what's happened to the west of us. Pickering has put forward a paper that would see Pickering and Ajax merge into one municipality, and I got to tell you, with the way Pickering is configured, it completely almost surrounds Ajax. It tends to make a lot of sense. And I think if we start to put our heads together and we think about this rationally and sanely, I think we can come up with some plans that can make sense, but most importantly, fit the bill, and that's to save money, save money, save money. And I think if we do our job, if we put our options together, and if we make the moves here at Oshawa, we will be controlling our own destiny, and we will not be at the other end of the shotgun barrel.
Thank you. I would like to just add a couple of comments as well, and I think the message that we're trying to send out is very clearly in the report: collaborative and cooperative approach. We are seeking dialogue with other communities, but I think we're doing so from a very realistic base. Any of us who attended Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference 2 weeks ago, and any of us who've known the minister, and as he used to be a business person in Oshawa, many of us know him well, have no doubt that the province will cause these changes to happen. Since this government was elected, we've gone from over 800 municipalities in Ontario to 500 and some, and we haven't even started the second round yet. So I think we would not only be fools just to sit back, but we would be doing such a terrible disservice to our community and through Durham Region collectively to all of our communities. And so what we are extending to the region is a request to do something that's positive for everyone, not assuming the answers before we begin. And to add a third C to the collaborative and cooperative is courage. And I think that each of our councils has to have the courage to face the change, and I don't know what's going to come at the end. But this council is collectively showing tonight that we have the courage to face the unknown, we've got the good sense to seek the cooperation of others, but we also realize that if we can't get that cooperation, if they won't allow us to work with them, then it is our obligation as elected officials in this municipality to continue to work under the direction of the province, because it's going to happen. And I don't think there's any member of this council who's just going to throw up their hands and say, okay, province, do it to us. We have far too much respect for this community to do that. Whatever the change will be, I agree, Councillor Boychin, you put it very well. It's got to be cost effective, it's got to be accountable government, and it has to be realistic government. I think that's what we're collectively looking for. And so we're coming out with a very strong statement, but one that is just so totally acceptable in our community. It's essential, it's achievable, and I'm very proud of Council that this has come through from that committee, and I think that we're absolutely on the right road. Councillor Herald, to close on behalf of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few very brief comments to close. First of all, to express my sincere appreciation of Council's participation and support of this committee report. I think Council's support is very important, and it sends a very strong message to our community that, of our concern, to deal in a very responsible manner with the largest issue that will be before this council or regional council in the foreseeable future. Secondly, I think it's important to say that I think it's time for Oshawa to take the initiative and indeed to show some leadership on the issue of future governance. I think that we need to take that initiative, and I'm very pleased that this council is taking that first step tonight in that direction. As I said in my opening remarks, I believe that this report it will stimulate a dialogue for constructive change, and I think that's very important. I think we want to be part of the dialogue, and I think we certainly want to be part of the constructive change that is going to occur. Also, I'll say once more that our committee believes very strongly that the recommendations contained in this report will lead to a fully cooperative approach that will provide a very important range of options, not only for this council, but for regional council. And after an analysis of those options, it will lead, without a doubt, to a better form of government. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Council, for your support.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Clerk, Councillor Brian Nicholson has requested a recorded vote. The item is Governance Reform in Durham Region Report.
Councillor B. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor M. Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Yes.
Councillor Acre.
Yes.
Councillor Boychin.
Yes.
Councillor Clarke.
Yes.
Mayor Diamond.
Yes.
Councillor Dykstra.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Councillor Herald.
Yes.
Councillor Colodzi.
Yes.
It's 11 affirmative, 0 negative.
Motion is carried unanimously, and I would also extend our thanks to Mr. John Brown, City Manager, and Mr. Terry Wertepney in the research and the background. Excellent report, Councillor Herald, from your committee. Thank you. Councillor Boychin?
Madam Mayor, I think it would be appropriate that I see that it was not included in the recommendation that a copy of this report be forwarded to each and every elected councillor, regional or local, within the regional municipality of Durham, in each of those municipalities.
Okay.
And I think, and it should also include to each of the MPPs that represent a portion of the region of Durham, should also be included in that list.
Okay. I would take that as a direction. Thank you.
Minister Gilchrist, with regard to this report at this time?
Yes, yes. Councillor Mike Nicholson?
Madam Mayor, I think if we're giving the reports out to the politicians, we should also forward copies to our Catholic or separate and public school board trustees, because they would have to be part of a process of restructuring within their municipalities too.
Okay. So full distribution will take place.
Everyone.
Okay. Okay. Could I have a motion on the tax rating bylaw report from the city manager, which is that the bylaw be amended to reflect the adjusted tax rates be received for information?
I'd be pleased to move that
Thank you.
motion, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Actually, I'll ask a question first, see whether the amendment is necessary. Part 4.0 refers to a continuing loss of $727,000 to the taxpayers of Oshawa, and indicating that on August 16th we received an application form to claim interest costs, but the report doesn't reflect whether or not we're making application for compensation under those areas. I guess to Mr. Brown, would it be useful to the process to include under the recommended action a direction that staff prepare and fill out the application form and submit the claim to the province for the amount of $727,000?
Mr. Brown is very ill. He's watching on television.
He said Mr. Brown, so I thought he actually snuck in. I apologize.
So you ask him to phone in.
Did we give him permission to get ill?
Well, he took a couple of days off, and I said that was the downfall.
Which of the treasurer? Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Tellis, we have the form, and what are we waiting for to send it in?
Madam Mayor, I'm currently in the process of compiling the data to submit that claim to the province, and I expect to have that application form completed before this weekend.
Wouldn't it be appropriate, though, for the council to request our staff to do that rather than staff to do that unilaterally? So I would suggest, Madam Mayor, that we had a part 2 of the new part 3, so that staff be directed to submit an application to the province asking to be compensated for interest costs from the delays to their system.
Okay, I just need a little stronger wording that staff seek compensation from the province, yes.
I'm willing to let the wording be
You
modified.
got your
The intent's there.
Okay, so that staff be directed to complete the necessary, did you get it, Mrs. Krantz? Did you get the wording? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Herald. On the amendment, those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And the main motion is amended. Those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Are there any questions to the Chair of the Strategic Initiatives Committee? Okay. Are there any notices of motion to be presented? There are no notices of motion previously given. I'll just give Durham Television a 4-minute warning that we have one motion and some bylaws, and then we'll have an in-camera portion, so we'll be closing down. Could I have the motion, please, the proclamation? Councillor Nicholson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson, to the City of Oshawa proclaim November 22nd to 30th, 1999 as AIDS Awareness Week.
Okay, on the motion, those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Any further proclamations? No? Okay. Bylaws with the exception of the confirming bylaw.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor John Gray that bylaws 82-99 to 86-99 be read a first and second time.
On first and second reading, questions?
8299. Will that bylaw reflect the amendments made today? So make sure we don't miss it.
Mr. Hunt?
Mayor, this bylaw is the official plan amendment bylaw, so it doesn't have to deal with the items that were spoken to today.
Okay, thank you. There's another question on the first items. Councillor Mike Nicholson?
Madam Chair, or Madam Mayor, I'd like to divide 82 from the rest.
Okay, you've heard that it isn't what the report was tonight. This is an official plan amendment, okay? Divide on 82. Councillor Dykstra, you had a question? Okay, I'll call the vote first and second reading on 82-99. Those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 83-99 to 86-99. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Herald?
Second by Councillor John Gray that bylaws 82-99 to 86-99 be read a third time and finally passed.
Where's the division again? Okay, on third reading, 82-99 to 86-99. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any further bylaws that I don't have in my book?